Yes.
The Leaf Green Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1532 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news yet again. Guess what? Out of the Middle East. There's still a hotbed down there. We're seeing that Iran has launched missile attacks on US-backed bases in Iraq. And right now we're seeing the US Air Force intercept missiles coming into bases. We're also seeing that explosions have erupted in Western Tehran again, and just after the fires happened yesterday. And also another big one, Putin is apparently preparing to launch attacks on decision-making centers in Kyiv with missiles, apparently around the May 9th parade, it sounds like. But it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments within the Middle East, Eastern Europe, East Asia, and also the United States of America over the course of this day as well. We have been able to hear that at the request of Pakistan, the United States of America has currently issued an ultimatum to the Islamic Republic of Iran in the midst of the ongoing developments, which we have been able to hear of in northern Iraq. At this moment in time, in northern Iraq, we are hearing that drone attacks have been conducted by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Iranian proxies within Iraq against US-backed forces within the area of Kurdistan. At the moment, the United States Air Force has been engaged in shooting down these drones over the area, although unfortunately several drones have made it through and have hit US-backed facilities throughout the entirety of northern Iraq. We have also been able to additionally hear that at the same time, the United States of America fired upon an Iranian ship today that was attempting to break the blockade near to the Gulf of Oman and have apparently jammed the rudder or damaged the rudder to the point that the ship was now inoperable and was no longer able to continue with its attempt to break the blockade. We have also been able to hear additional details that the United States of America has gone through a significant diplomatic rigmarole over the course of the day, which is the only way that we can describe it, as in the morning, the United States issued an ultimatum that the Iranians had 1 week to make a deal. Then afterwards, we stated that the Iranians didn't have to make a deal, and then we stated that the Iranians needed to make a deal, but it could happen at any time, further than just 1 week away. We've also been able to hear additional news as well within the United Arab Emirates that directed energy weapons do appear to be arriving near to the international airports, as Dubai and also the entirety of the United Arab Emirates is still attempting to shore up its air defenses to be able to stop further drone incursions by the Iranians, which still have been ongoing. The Iranians also explained away the explosions that happened, or the mysterious sounds of explosions that happened at Qeshm and Bandar Abbas last night, as air defense fire, which actually does appear to be supported by picture and video evidence, as video evidence emerged today showing an Iranian citizen apparently bringing back some remnants of an MQ-9 Reaper that appears to have fallen into the sea near to the area of the island of Qeshm. The Iranians have also continued to make threatening statements towards ships attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz over the course of this day, and we've also been able to hear that apparently the Iranians had a standoff with one of the Arleigh guided missile destroyers that had made it through the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S.'s Frankie Peterson, and we were able to get at least the Iranian side of the story as to that situation over the course of the day. We have also been able to hear that the Pakistani government has put out a statement largely corroborating that the United States of America has stopped its Project Freedom at the request of the Pakistani government, which is something interesting to note in its own right. We have also been able to hear within Tehran that the Iranian government is continuing to try and clown the United States and is continuing to make inflammatory statements as they believe that their position is fairly confident at this moment due to the fact that the blockade continues to not be challenged by the United States of America. We have also been able to see that in a bombshell report that was issued today, hundreds of satellite images have confirmed that the U.S. And the damage that was caused to U.S. facilities throughout the Middle East was far more extensive than the U.S. military and the U.S. government have ever led the public to believe during the time of the war or during the immediate time afterwards. As satellite photography has proven today, we have been able to hear that several hundred facilities were damaged throughout the entirety of the Middle East by direct attacks from Iranian missiles and drones. Once again showing that the United States government has not been transparent or forthcoming with how the war actually unfolded for the United States of America, and maybe showing us a bit of a reason why the United States is hesitant at this moment on continuing the armed conflict at this point in time right now. We have also been able to hear, additionally, that Israeli forces have continued their actions within Lebanon, bombing the southern suburbs of Beirut and Dahia, and also apparently knocking out the Radwan commander who was eliminated last night. We've also been able to hear that the Israelis were shocked at the announcement of the end of Project Freedom, as the Israelis, according to their own statement, were preparing to jump on the Iranians due to them firing on U.S. vessels, or at least expected to be firing upon U.S. vessels due to Operation Project Freedom commencing. South Korea also completely canceled their legal review as to whether South Korea could be involved in supporting Project Freedom, as it was canceled, much to the surprise of everybody in the world, including South Korea and also Israel, and now South Korea stated that they will not be involved in Project Freedom due to the fact that it no longer exists. We've also been able to hear that as of today, North Korea has officially removed the reunification clause from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea's constitution, as the country is now moving away from reunification with South Korea and is starting to move towards other goals that are now going to be realigned under the Juche Doctrine. We've also been able to additionally hear that the People's Republic of China stressed to the foreign minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, that a ceasefire is desperately needed right now in between Iran and the United States of America. We also believe that they were most likely talking about giving Iran weapons, so that way they can make sure that a ceasefire is not conducted as quickly as it can possibly be, and once again shore up the Iranian position in the event of further U.S. attacks. Additionally, the Ukrainian armed forces have also announced last night that the Russian Federation did attack the state of Ukraine overnight with drones, and surprisingly enough, targeted a kindergarten within Ukraine. As a result of this, President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that the gloves are now off for the 9th of May, and the Ukrainians will be attempting to go dead into the center of Moscow in the middle of the 9th of May and try and cancel the parade through means of force. The Russian Federation has panicked as a result and is now threatening the Ukrainians and also warning all diplomats to evacuate Kyiv immediately, as they plan on striking central governmental buildings within the city of Kyiv on the 9th of May in the midst of the ongoing parade. The Ukrainian armed forces have also landed significant hits on the Russian Federation behind the lines over the course of the day, with some strikes occurring within Luhansk and Mariupol around the surrounding highways and the significant supply depots that exist within this area. Confirmed damage was also seen on the FSB headquarters within the city of Armyansk in the Crimean Peninsula, and we've also seen that over the course of this day, Ukrainian armed forces have engaged the Russian Federation in small infantry battles around the city of Pokrovsk, seizing some small gains and pushing the Russian Federation back to an extent. We have a significant amount of news to cover over this day. All of this news and a whole lot more to cover that I was not able to get to in the summary yet. And also, really quickly, some of y'all might be noticing that I'm talking something of a fast clip. I do apologize, everybody. We have about 60-something bulletins tonight that we have to cover just over the past 24 hours. There is a lot to cover, and even with these streams usually running for 4 hours these days, it is very little time to be able to cover this much news. So, without further ado, we are going to be getting into all of this news, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. We have been able to hear that breaking news has emerged and significant developments are now unfolding within northern Iraq, as news did come out that there are ongoing drone attacks within the northern area of Iraq on US-backed facilities in Kurdistan, in the semi-autonomous region of Kurdistan, within the Republic of Iraq. According to information that just came out, Iranian drones struck a PDKI camp north of Erbil today. Two drones on Gurde Chal, where PDKI member facilities and families live, and 2 to 3 are wounded, according to Reuters. Tehran is hitting Iranian Kurdish opposition groups that are exiled in Iraq, and some groups the CIA is reportedly arming to pressure the regime. This appears to be a significant drone attack operation that is being conducted by the IRGC, from what we believe is inside of Iran, against US-backed forces and US-backed facilities that are within northern Iraq within the semi-autonomous region of Kurdistan. Currently, we do understand that according to prior U.S. statements, the United States of America is actively arming and supporting, as an ally, the Kurds in northern Iraq in the operations against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And according to additional words that were given by the United States, we are actually giving weapons still to a lot of these Kurdish forces for them to be able to eventually smuggle them across the border and hand them out to Iranian civilians so that way they may eventually conduct some form of an armed uprising against the Iranian regime. Picture and video evidence did emerge confirming that these attacks had been conducted, as this video here actually shows some of the attacks and some of the air activity that was being conducted within northern Iraq during this point in time. Well, you see one of the impacts right there. We also got additional footage as well, showing us the strikes from multiple other angles and locations, like this clip right here. We hear the drone coming in on its final dive and slamming directly into the facility.
That's some pretty bad hits right there, it looks like. It looks like a pretty comprehensive drone strike that Iran launched. So, sadly, we don't have the exact number of drones that Iran launched at Iraq, but it appears to be quite a lot of them. And this is just a couple of videos, by the way. We got a lot more reports of explosions and fighter jet activity over the skies of Iraq. So this is just some of it.
And I would have to say, this is only a little bit of it. We don't know the extent of these strikes. We were able to confirm, however, that according to eyewitness reports in northern Iraq, there was the sound of turbo jets or turbo fans within the area, or just generally jet engines as a whole, which does suggest that the U.S. Air Force was active over the airspace and attempting to shoot down these drones. And we were able to get some additional information from other outlets that did confirm that the U.S. Air Force was active and attempting to shoot down these drones in the area. At the moment, we understand that the United States is treating the Kurdish forces as an allied U.S. ground force, which is provided the same sorts of air defense protections that U.S. ground forces would be provided elsewhere within the region. For this point, this means that the Iranians are largely attacking in extenuation at this point of U.S. forces within the region in our allies that are the Kurds, that are heavily supported by the United States within northern Iraq. And these clips right here of continued strikes are once again showing us the kind of damage that is being seen at this moment and the failed interceptions. We also had one last clip here showing us another one of these strikes. And there's the impact.
Jeez. Well, if there was jets in the sky, they certainly weren't audible in this video. Like, it seems like it's just nonstop impacts and pretty much no jet activity, at least in the clip.
At least in the clip, we do believe that there was jet activity. There were a couple of eyewitness reports that confirmed the sound of jet engines overhead, which would give us the idea that someone's Air Force was airborne, highly likely the U.S. Air Force, that was attempting to intercept and shoot down these drones. But it didn't really appear that there was a lot of success in intercepting and shooting down these drones. As we were able to see, there are 4 individual videos and clips showing impacts and strikes on multiple Kurdish facilities within northern Iraq. So it does appear that at this moment, moment, the Islamic Republic of Iran is continuing attacks against Kurdish forces within northern Iraq and are continuing to hit them with a great deal of their own discretion and prejudice, if you want to call it that. And the United States is hardly making a response at this moment to these ongoing attacks, which are against a US-backed ally that is US-armed and supported within northern Iraq. In the meantime, the United States of America has had a fairly interesting day of diplomacy and foreign policy, to say the least, as the foreign policy position evolved, mutated, changed, flip-flopped, and zigzagged about 9 times over the course of this day. And I will be making sure to cover this in the sequence of events that is to follow in the public statements that were made by the U.S. government over the course of this day. But before we get on into that and into the foreign policy outlook that we're seeing at this moment right now, I do want to make sure that we talk about these strikes that were conducted on US-backed Kurdish allies within northern Iraq by the IRGC today. And a lot of people are wondering what should be done as a result of these attacks on our Kurdish allies that are currently working with the US government to try and supply arms and equipment to Iranian rebels in the country to eventually see that somehow a successful government coup is conducted against the Islamic regime. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that right now? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so Iran decided today to just completely disregard the ceasefire yet again. They started launching these missile attacks and drone attacks on Iraq. And right now it's believed that they were trying to target the Kurdish forces inside of Iraq. But also there's some other reports suggesting that maybe U.S. bases might have gotten hit as well. So between those two, it's a pretty bad situation. So what should be done about this new escalation from the Iranians? 64% said the U.S. should obviously hit the Iranian mainland in retaliation, while 21% said the U.S. should pack up and go home, and 9% said the U.S. should simply defend against it and leave it at that. So the reason why Iran probably did this today is because the news broke yesterday, and the U.S. president said himself that maybe the Kurds might get some more weapons again. So then today we see Iraq, which is partially home to the Kurds, is getting hit by Iranian missiles yet again today that we just saw on camera. So that's pretty obvious why they're doing that, and that's also pretty bad as well because once again the Kurds are getting slammed, and also potentially U.S. forces are getting slammed as well from the looks of it. So at this point, like we've been saying, I've been saying this for a minute, the U.S. should immediately resume attacks on Iran. They're clearly not looking for peace. They're attacking in the region once again. They've been attacking the UAE. They've been hitting our warships in the Strait of Hormuz, and now they're hitting the Kurds in Iraq. So that doesn't sound like a peace-loving country to me. That sounds like one looking for a bruising. So I'm with the 64%. The U.S. should retaliate since the ceasefire is no longer a thing. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would be with the 64%. The Iranians have clearly broken the ceasefire multiple times. Anybody who says otherwise doesn't understand what the common English definition of a ceasefire is. The Iranians have fired at U.S. warships yesterday. They fired at merchant ships yesterday. They fired at an ally in the UAE yesterday. And now they are attacking Kurdish-backed allies in northern Iraq today. In those individual broader umbrella statements, the Iranians have broken the ceasefire in 4 different ways. And if we were to count all of the individual warships, merchant ships, targets in the UAE, and targets in northern Iraq that have been targeted that clearly broke the ceasefire, that then moves the number of ceasefire violations into the dozens at a minimum at this point right now. This is a clear violation of the ceasefire, and the United States should resume military actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran, because doing otherwise at this point is looking like pure cowardice at the point of the U.S. government. The Iranians have blatantly violated the ceasefire by all extents and definitions of what a ceasefire is, and this requires for the United States to save face by continuing military actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran, because if they aren't willing to respect a ceasefire, then we have no choice but to continue armed actions against the Iranians. If they want to respect a ceasefire, then we won't shoot at them. But they don't want to respect a ceasefire. They're shooting at us, they're shooting at our allies, and that requires that the United States fires back. That's the only thing that we can do, and insisting that the ceasefire remains in place and Iranian attacks are quote-unquote mostly peaceful is doing nothing but making the United States look like a joke in foreign policy. And moving us on out of that analysis on the attacks that are currently happening in northern Iraq and have continued to happen throughout the entirety of the region over the past 48 hours, we have been able to see some significant evolutions in foreign policy and U.S. statements and positions over the course of the day on this matter. According to the first news of the day that we were able to get in sequence, it did appear that there was a sharp reversal in prices this morning on WTI crude. We did see that the price started to drop pretty significantly, back down around $89 per barrel, and then over the course of this day, it started to shoot back up to 95. At this point right now, we're actually seeing that oil is still sitting in WTI markets at around $95.23 per barrel, which is not the highest that we've seen it at, though at least within recent days. The highest was about 110, but it does appear that it's now once again back on the rebound to start heading up towards its higher prices that we've seen recently within the past few weeks. We've also been able to hear that afterwards, the first statements that were made this morning by the U.S. government, or specifically the U.S. president, was the following. And this was issued this morning on May 6th of 2026, around the time of 5:50 a.m. Assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary epic fury will be at an end, and the highly effective blockade will allow the Hormuz Strait to be open to all, including Iran. If they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be, sadly, at a much higher level and intensity than it was before. So that was the statement this morning by the U.S. government. Huh?
Wait a second here. Did you catch that at the beginning right there? There was a little bit of an added detail right here. I just caught it right now when you read that. It says in the first sentence, it says, assuming Iran agrees to give what has already been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary epic fury will be at an end. Well, I mean, Marco just said yesterday that Epic Fury is over with. He just said at the podium yesterday that the operations of Epic Fury have been terminated. So the president here is saying something to the contrary. He's saying that it will be at an end if Iran follows through the agreement that he's claiming they've reached. So that's completely opposite to what they just said yesterday at the press briefing.
Yes, it is completely opposite. Also, on top of that, just to break it down a little bit further, according to the first statement, assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, so apparently this is now suggesting that we have an agreement with the Iranians that has not been disclosed to the public, and they've yet to follow through on carrying out whatever they've agreed to in the background, which we don't know what that is. But that statement right there states in plain language that apparently there has been some sort of an agreement that has had a handshake in the background on, and apparently they haven't followed through with it yet, but there is an agreement and we have no clue what it is in the public. Then we were able to hear afterwards that if they don't agree to a deal, now suggesting in the same statement prior, once again, just to remind everyone here, because this is very hard to break down because it's very confusing. According to the first sentence, we have an agreement with the Iranians and they haven't followed through on it. Then according to the second sentence, which starts off with if they don't agree, which then suggests that there isn't a deal and they haven't agreed to anything, then we start bombing them again, according to the statement by the President of the United States. So what we can largely get out of this, at least at the moment right now, is that there is an ultimatum that has been given to the Iranians that has to be met at some certain qualification within a certain period of time. Otherwise, the United States will begin to start bombardments against the Islamic Republic of Iran again, possibly across the whole country or just across a specific area. We're not entirely sure. But we also were able to then hear afterwards that the president then stated, according to some media outlets which were able to speak with him this morning, that the president told the Post this Wednesday morning that it is too soon to start thinking about face-to-face peace talks between the U.S. and Iran. Despite optimistic reports, the two nations were closing in on a potential framework to end their 67-day war. So this morning we were hearing that they had agreed to something and they hadn't followed through with it, and then in the same statement, the statement was then made that they hadn't agreed to anything. They need to agree to something, so we need to talk to them and make a deal. And now we're hearing just about an hour later, quite literally, just to show you this really quickly, the Twitter timestamps here, because these are the more important ones. This post by FlyTux Network was made at 5:50 a.m. in the morning, so we'd assume that this tweet came out most likely 9 minutes before, given the timestamp was 1:41 p.m. in a different time zone in Europe, and they put this out at 5:50. That was about 9 minutes after the post was made. So then about an hour after that post was made, the president was on a phone call with the press and then stated that it was too soon to talk with the Iranians and make a deal with them, and they need to wait a little bit longer. And according to the Post, they asked whether the Post should prepare to send a reporter back to Pakistan for a new round of negotiations, and the president responded, "I don't think so." So after the U.S. said there needs to be a deal made or we start bombing them, we then stated that we're not willing to even talk to them and it's too soon to make a deal and it'll have to wait. So the position had already changed within the course of 1 hour from being an ultimatum to apparently we're not even going to talk to them for them to meet the demands of the ultimatum. Then afterwards, we were able to hear that apparently, according to another statement that was made in the middle of the day to Fox News from the president, Iran had 1 week to sign a deal. So now we had finally heard at this point that the morning tweet that was made at 1:40, around 5:41 in the morning, that stated that the Iranians had to make a deal, that was then backtracked by the president stating that it was too soon to make a deal, was then expounded upon that we are going to be trying to make a deal with them, and it needs to be done before the end of this week. So that apparently gives a 7 to 5 day timetable, we're assuming, that the Iranians would have to make some agreement by, or according to the words of the president, the United States would begin bombarding the country again. Then we were able to hear that according to some anonymous Gulf state nations that spoke to Politico, they stated that the president badly wants the war to end, but Iran is refusing to give him what he needs to save face and leave, according to the one Gulf official, which we don't know who in the world this is. So that appears to be some sort of a statement that we're still trying to get some verification to, because once again, considering that it's anonymous, we don't know how accurate that one is. However, we then were able to hear that just a few hours before the stream, which I'll have to pause that right there, and I won't be able to show you all either of these clips. This was around 1:16 local time in the afternoons. This was about 7 hours before our show went live right now. A reporter asked the president in the Oval Office today at some sort of a UFC meeting in the Oval Office if there was a deadline for the Iranians to make a deal, and then the president stated there never was a deadline, but it will happen. So to now cover the entire foreign policy announcements and what we think we're working off of right now, here's what we've seen over the past 24 hours. The president stated at the beginning of the morning that the Iranians will be given an ultimatum and they have to reach a deal with us by a certain amount of time, otherwise we begin the war against them again. We then stated afterwards that apparently it's too soon to be talking about a deal, so we're not even going to Islamabad to talk about them for them to meet the qualifications of that ultimatum and to make a deal with them. We then heard that apparently they have 1 week to make the deal, now making the deal exist again, and apparently talks would have to happen as a result of that to be able to achieve anything with the Iranians. And then we were able to hear that apparently the 1 week ultimatum that was given is not real and there is no timeline. It will be done, but it's not going to be done in a week. We've also been able to yeah, so
it's just like I mean I can tell you're having a hard time keeping up with it yourself. It's kind of hard to follow, even hearing it being narrated. It's kind of hard to follow right here. I think though, like what this all means right here, like these mixed messaging, like all over the place, like all the jokes aside for a second, because I see people like joking like crazy about it. I think what this indicates is that the U.S. currently does not have leverage over the situation, which we've been saying for some time, and it's mainly because of the Strait of Hormuz. That's where the leverage is currently being levered by Iran for the most part, and the U.S. is really not at the helm here when it comes to this. Also, it's kind of backed up by the fact that the U.S. just ended Project Freedom, or whatever that operation was to get the ships through the strait. They just brought that to an end after like 48 hours or something like that, which was pretty embarrassing to see that. So that's what that indicates to me. They're basically sitting back and letting the Iranians drive the ship, which is not a smart idea, by the way, because if the Iranians drive it, they're going to drag this out for as long as they can, so that way it inflicts the most economic damage on the United States, which is why we've been saying it's wise to get back to striking the Iranian regime, or otherwise we're going to be in a quagmire even worse than we're in right now. So I think that's that's probably what's going on.
Probably definitely is what's going on, I would assume. But also, by the way, I see a lot of people saying that was confusing to follow, and that's okay. It's so confusing to follow that I actually had to go back through the bullet points and the titles I put on them to even be able to try and remember the sequence of events of how the foreign policy position morphed like a chameleon over the course of the entire day today leading up to this show. It's almost it is impossible for us to follow, and it's also wildly impossible for everyone else to follow. Before I get to the whole deal basic end result of this whole thing that we've seen today, which is an alleged U.S. offer that we've made to Iran. I want to show you how confusing this is for other people to follow at the national level for other countries. According to the Israelis, in a statement that was made today, according to the Israelis, they stated that we were unaware of the American intention to end the operation in the Strait of Hormuz, and we had prepared for escalation. Meaning that the Israelis had assumed that the U.S. was going to stick with Project Freedom, the Iranians were going to fire on U.S. warships and merchant vessels as we attempted to break the blockade, and as a result of that, the war was going to start again. That's what the Israelis had assumed, and the blockade was started and canceled so quickly, the Israelis hardly had any time to even be able to react or largely work with the United States on what was going to be happening. In fact, the whiplash is so bad that after the president put pressure publicly on the South Koreans to join Project Freedom and to assist in helping ships break the blockade, the South Koreans began a legal review in their country as to whether or not they could actually conduct any military operations in support of Project Freedom. Project Freedom was started and canceled so quickly that the South Korean government had to come out today and publicly announce that they had suspended its review of joining the U.S.-led naval mission in the Strait of Hormuz after the president put the plan on hold and largely canceled it within less than 36 hours. National Security Advisor Wee Sung-lak stated, "A review is no longer needed at this point due to the fact that it doesn't even exist anymore." So the U.S. is moving at such a fast speed, I guess we could call it Warp 9, because no one, even our allies, can even follow the speed at which the foreign policy position is changing at this point, even for countries that are attempting to help us out and assist us possibly, like South Korea, which was seriously exploring a possible option of sending their own navy down to help us out with our own project that we announced the start of and then ended faster than they could even give us an answer, in less than about a day and a half. So there we have that. It's been quite the conundrum, or the conundry, if you want to call it that, over the past day after the cancellation of Project Freedom, and now it's amalgamated into what we finally heard as an alleged claim by the United States government, or at least an alleged offer by the United States government to Iran at this point. According to what we've been able to hear from Joseph Habush, he has stated that a senior U.S. official to the Wall Street Journal editorial board stated the following as U.S. demands currently towards Iran: a 20-year enrichment ban on all uranium types, to hand over all enriched material, an attestation that it doesn't seek nuclear weapons, or more so a declaration that it doesn't attempt to seek nuclear weaponry. The Iranians would dismantle Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. There would be a ban on underground nuclear work, and an on-demand inspection and penalties for violations if the on-demand inspections were not obliged by the Iranian government.
Man, that sounds vaguely reminiscent of a prior nuclear deal that used to exist that was heavily criticized. That sounds like the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the JCPOA, that was negotiated under the Obama administration. It sounds very similar to that. There's only a couple of caveats that are different, like handing over all the enriched uranium. I think that's different. But, I mean, inspections, I mean, that was the Achilles heel of the JCPOA, was the fact that Iran was not letting the inspectors see all of their secret nuclear sites where they were secretly enriching uranium, and they were keeping the inspectors out of those sites. They were letting them inspect some of these other sites that were red herrings to keep them distracted for the most part. So that sounds like we've come full circle to a large degree. So I hope that's not actually the proposal on the table, because if it is, we basically come full circle, and we've done all this for nothing at that point, and we've also given up the Strait of Hormuz. So I'm hoping that's not accurate.
I hope not. It does appear, I was just quickly pulling it up, folks. I'm actually looking at Annex 1 of the JCPOA right here, and it actually appears that a lot of these points, outside of handing over all of the enriched uranium, are quite literally inside of the JCPOA, or they're incredibly similar in wordage, almost to the point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of them actually are. Like, there's this entire provision here, Provision E, under Annex 1, is literally about the Iranians for 15 years not using spent uranium fuel for nuclear programs, or attempting to enrich it into some form of usable fissile material and whatnot. So I mean, there are entire provisions in the JCPOA that almost have the exact same time frame parameters on almost the very same topics about what the Iranians can and cannot do. We can see that right here for enrichment capacity. And we can see that Iran will keep its level of enrichment at up to 3.67%, which is only enriched enough for energy purposes for 15 years. According to the current news that we're getting right now, it looks like this is very close to being that sort of an agreement, but just slightly more strict, but hardly any more strict than the JCPOA. It's basically like a slightly muscular version of the JCPOA, but almost identical in most ways.
Yeah, that's really strange right there. Also, by the way, since we're on this topic, let's go ahead and address the poll real quick on this. The question on the poll says, would you support returning to the JCPOA if the U.S. decided to end the Iran war right now? And since right now we're getting word from this report right here that this is allegedly the plan that's floating around, which is basically, it sounds like to me, JCPOA 2.0, even though that deal was highly criticized and also it was done away with, and because of all the criticism, it was done away with. It sounds like they might be about to return back to it if that report's accurate. So would you support that, returning back to it if the war simply came to an end right now? 41% said no, that is entirely unacceptable, while 28% said yes, I would, that's the best solution right now, and 17% said it depends on the exact terms. And I will say this, I actually agreed with the criticisms of the JCPOA. I actually agreed with the criticisms because the problem with the plan was we couldn't ensure that Iran was being transparent and letting us see all of their nuclear sites. It's too easy to covertly enrich uranium on the side, which is what the Iranians were doing. It's too easy to do that. So, if any plan relies on inspections and it relies on the Iranians being forthcoming and honest, that's a bad plan. And it sounds to me like this new proposal here, if it's accurate, is generally relying on that same major issue that was the main problem with the JCPOA. So to me, that's entirely unacceptable. That's a major problem right there. And also, not to mention that, but the U.S. just can't end the war right now. Even if we get the nuclear deal, nailed out to where it makes sense, Iran still controls the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is not letting us leave the region. We can't leave the region and leave the Strait of Hormuz in the control of the Iranians. If we do that, we are basically dooming ourselves to economic ruin if we do that. We can't leave and leave the Iranians in charge of it. So, even if the nuclear stuff gets sorted, we can't leave. So if we have to stay, which we do have to stay, we might as well finish the job and also take out the nuclear program and make sure that regime can't restart it whatsoever. Just finish the job. We're there. We have to stay. Just get it done. That's my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that going through this whole effort at this point, going through an entire war, expending the amount of munitions that we have, costing the lives that we have in the U.S. Armed Services, to basically go all the way back to the Obama-era JCPOA, which was quite weak in its enforcement capabilities, considering that it relied on the good faith of the Iranians and their follow-through to see that it was ever allowed at all to actually be within the parameters of the JCPOA, is something that I generally say I'm heavily against. The whole reason that we're at war with them right now is because it is an extremist terrorist regime that has been attempting for decades to build nuclear weaponry. And here's my question, folks. Here's the big question I have to say, because there's, of course, going to be many people who say that that's not true, and the Iranians were within the parameters of the JCPOA, and even before the JCPOA, Iran, who just wants to kill everybody in the West, particularly Jews and Americans, they just, we're just working on peaceful nuclear weapons. Why in the world did they build all of these subterranean nuclear development complexes if everything that they were doing was just above board and for peaceful energy production? Why in the world would they feel like there was such a heavy threat that they would eventually get bombed and destroyed? Obviously that they're clearly doing that's peaceful, that they would need to build all these tunnel complexes to house the nuclear facilities in, so that they couldn't be bombed out and destroyed. That clearly suggests that when they started out their nuclear program, it already had nefarious notions to it at its very inception. If they were only conducting peaceful actions, they would be totally fine with having only above-ground nuclear facilities. They would also be completely fine with agreeing to anything that would allow daily observation of these facilities by the IAEA. Yet they never accepted any of that. The first time that we knew about Fordow and Natanz, which are their actual enrichment facilities, was in 2009. Do y'all know how long those facilities had existed before we discovered them? 6 years. So they clearly built these under heavy secrecy back then for the purposes of developing nuclear weaponry, and the JCPOA came in and said, all in y'all's good faith, on GA, y'all are not going to enrich beyond this certain amount in the underground super secret facilities that we can't get in. And then they promised, yes, we're not going to enrich these in the super secret underground facilities that y'all can't get in and look at, and we can promise y'all, pinky promise, we're not trying to still make a nuclear weapon. That's what made the entire JCPOA so weak, is that there's no way to actually see that they're following through with what they have agreed with.
Yeah, and also with Pickaxe Mountain, too, that's another site. Pickaxe Mountain is a new site that's been under construction since 2020. It's only a mile south of the Natanz nuclear site. I can't recall if the Natanz site was one of those facilities that was being inspected. I can't recall that or not under the JCPOA, but Pickaxe Mountain was specifically created so that way airstrikes could not hit that facility, and also that it was so stealth that they wouldn't be detected inside of that mountain. It's inside of, I believe it's Zagros Mountain, I believe is what it is, near Natanz, is where they have that facility in literally embedded in the rock of the mountain, so that way people can't see it. So, and also, here's another catch. Iran admits they have a massive amount of enriched uranium. They've not denied that. In fact, Russia even offered to take it off of the Iranians' hands and take it into Russian custody if it would appease the United States. So there's no debate that Iran has enriched the uranium. They admit they have. And also, they had to do it here at these secret facilities that the inspectors were not being allowed to go into and look at under the JCPOA. So that's the problem. You can't reach a deal that requires inspections like that. It's pointless, and there was no point to starting this war if that's what we're going to fall back on.
And I would definitely have to agree. And also another thing that I have to point out, folks, this is a very important one, is that the U.S. didn't even realize that Pickaxe Mountain as a facility, at least from what we know in the public, that it even existed until after Operation Midnight Hammer had concluded. So if we had agreed to anything, according to the JCPOA, we only know and are able to request inspections of facilities that we know of. We didn't know of Pickaxe Mountain until the latter part of the summer last year. And that's also the other problem. If they agree to anything, we have no clue if they're actually adhering to it, because they're running this entire program in the utmost secrecy. They are digging tunnel networks to stop the facilities from getting bombed. They're also building these tunnel networks so extensively that they can fit an entire complex inside of it, and we have no clue what they're doing down there. We know that they have enriched uranium. I mean, every single U.S. administration in the past 6 years has admitted that the Iranians have enriched uranium above a 70% grade. For nuclear power purposes, you only have to enrich uranium to about 3.4 to 3.6%. Anything higher than that, you're working towards getting fissile material for a nuclear weapon, which requires enrichment up around 90% or even higher than that. So the fact that they're enriching all the way up to 70% clearly is giving us the understanding they're not enriching that just to have some really souped up, fuel rods for a nuclear reactor down at Bushehr. They're clearly enriching that to create a nuclear weapon. Why would they go through all of the additional expense and effort to produce uranium that is enriched to that degree when it's not necessary for power production? That's clearly showing they're working that up to being refined enough to have a nuclear weapon. So all of these things, all of these facts show that going into a second version of the JCPOA is going to be completely pointless. It is absolutely asinine and ridiculous. We're basically hamstringing ourselves again and pretending like the Iranians are all honky-dory when a terrorist regime, as it has been for decades, is still attempting to work towards a nuclear weapon. That we know, and it would be ridiculous to know anything else or pretend like we know something else and to agree to some sort of a stupid deal that is going to hamstring us again and allow for them to continue their nuclear weapons programs with a veil of legitimacy to it. And in the midst of that all, they pretend to the international community that they're adhering to the new terms. That wouldn't make any sense at all. But with that, it is time for us to move on and out of this news, as we have been able to hear some other significant developments within the region as well. Over the course of this day, a bombshell report came out that I have to say, folks, is not really that good. And I do have to say that one company has actually done pretty good in finding this information. The Washington Post has actually done a little bit of an assessment on satellite imagery. We're not able to know where they got this from, because from what we know, most US-based satellite firms are still not allowing unrestricted access to high-fidelity satellite photography of US bases or US-operated bases within the Middle East. So we're assuming that they may have gotten this from China or from some other country that doesn't have these censorships on their satellite photography. But according to the Washington Post, based on satellite imagery, Iranian strikes have damaged or destroyed at least 228 facilities, that's buildings in common words, at American bases across the region, including barracks, hangars, radar systems, Patriot and THAAD defenses, aircraft, fuel depots, and communication centers. The newspaper analyzed more than 100 satellite images and concluded the attacks were far more precise and large-scale than was officially acknowledged. The hardest-hit sites were in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the UAE, which basically, in short, means everywhere that U.S. forces were based at were the heaviest hit. In some cases, U.S. personnel had been partially withdrawn in advance due to these expected strikes. One of the most serious attacks hit the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, which we were able to visually confirm when the strikes were conducted over a dozen times on that facility throughout the entirety of the armed phase of the conflict. According to sources, the damage was so severe that some operations were temporarily relocated to Florida, most likely the CENTCOM's headquarters area, which I believe is at MacDill Air Force Base. But we can actually see in some of the pictures that Washington Post did publish in their article today, some of the satellite proof of the damage that was caused to U.S. Buildings and facilities on U.S. bases throughout the region. And it was pretty extensive. A good bit more extensive than we were led to believe in the public, and even our analysis was able to forecast here on this channel, due to the fact that the U.S. government went out of its way to quote-unquote request that satellite companies do not allow for uncensored satellite photographs to be given to the public without a 2-week hold, and then that was later rescinded to be permanently into the indefinite future, meaning that we were not able to see from the open source intelligence end what kind of damage Iranian drone attacks and missile strikes were actually posing to U.S. forces and bases within the region. And this is starting to give us an understanding that Iranian drone attacks, particularly, were a lot more damaging than anyone had been led to believe in the public. We had reported in the armed phase of the war, when that was ongoing in March, that it did appear that Iranian drones were posing a significant threat, and that the United States military did not have any purpose-built drone defenses inside of its forces to be able to deal with such a threat, largely giving us an Achilles heel. Many people wanted to laud those statements and say that obviously that's just propaganda. Just because the U.S. hasn't actually prepared for the next age in modern warfare doesn't mean that we're going to be taken out to the cleaners by drones. And it appears that by the satellite photography that the Washington Post was finally able to get, it clearly does appear that the drone attacks were about as damaging as we were believing that they would be, and it is showing that there is a massive gap in U.S. air defenses right now against drones. And the ridiculousness...
This is actually worse than I thought it was. Like, I didn't think it was this bad. Like, I knew it was worse than the U.S. was letting on, but this is actually worse than I was imagining in my head about this. Also, by the way, just real quick, so people generally know what was protecting these locations right here, these American bases. To my knowledge, I think there's like CRAM protecting these bases, which is basically like an automated machine gun that shoots down incoming projectiles. Also, did they have what type of air defense they have? Did they have Patriots around any of this stuff, or what were they working with?
From what we understand, all air defenses in the Middle East were mostly long-range missile interceptors, such as the THAAD battery and the MEM 104 Patriots. But at some facilities, there were CRAM gun-based air defenses as well. But those are fairly expensive to operate and not in wildly large numbers. And from what we've seen so far, their efficacy per round fired is actually fairly low. So those were about as efficient in reality as the Patriot and the THAAD interceptors, which had a very hard time dealing with the incoming numbers that were happening wave over wave every day.
Yeah, and it seems to be, just looking at these images right here, it appears to be most likely Shahed drone damage, possibly from drones impacting on these sites. We do know that Iran did launch missiles, but they launched a lot more drones than they did missiles. So it's safe to assume that most of this damage right here is probably from, the cheap Shaheds coming in and hitting all these different targets right here. So that was the exact blind spot that Ukraine was trying to come in and help about, because Ukraine has perfected the defenses defenses against those drones. They've largely perfected that to a large degree, and they've learned how to shoot them down without having to use these multi-million-dollar Patriot missile interceptors. Because obviously with a Patriot, you only have so many interceptors. You don't have like an unlimited number. You can't just fire thousands of them. It doesn't work like that. But with drones, you could potentially have hundreds of those coming in at a single time. So, I mean, the deficiency is obvious. There's just simply the numbers don't add up. So, we need a better defense because clearly it looks like we got overwhelmed, which was somewhat predictable, but it looks like we did get overwhelmed to a large degree.
Yeah, it does appear that it did get overwhelmed, and this is also, unfortunately, showing us that the U.S. government is continuing to try and cover up a lot of the story that has actually unfolded in the Middle East as far as the U.S. strategic position is concerned, the tactical position is concerned, how effective the air defenses were, and how effective our strikes were, and making sure that strategically the United States is not put on the back foot. Basically, at this point, the United States is misrepresented or completely fabricated and lied to the public on most every single one of these topics, as we had been told by the U.S. government that the damage to U.S. bases and facilities throughout the region was negligible, if not non-existent for most facilities, save for a few which were visually confirmed at the very start to have been directly hit, meaning that the U.S. government downplayed and actually completely lied about the situation the U.S. armed forces were in, and they were actually taking some pretty decent damage to a decent amount of facilities throughout the entirety of the region over the armed phase of the conflict, which might be giving us an idea, or at least a concept at this moment, why the U.S. might not be a big fan of restarting the war with Iran again, as they may be realizing that the drone warfare situation has been so grossly neglected by the U.S. government and the armed forces, and so unaccounted for in this conflict, that we actually have no effective way of dealing with the threat at the moment, or dispatching them and shooting them down, like the Ukrainians, or any other country that's been heavily experienced in drone warfare would be at this point.
Yeah.
A little bit unfortunate.
I guess on if we're trying to find a silver lining here, which it's kind of hard to do at this point because obviously these images here kind of paint a bit of a grim image to say the least. At least this wasn't happening with a war with China. At least we're not in a war with China right now and having to deal with this. That would be a lot different because China has the capability to launch attacks here on the U.S. mainland using cargo ships that are disguised as drone carriers, so the other way around, and that's a huge problem right there. So maybe, unfortunately, this is a very expensive wake-up call. That's the downside of this. But maybe this is the wake-up call that we needed here in the United States to get prepared for this new form of warfare right here. Because one day there will be a war with China. It's going to come eventually because we're already working our way toward it right now. And if we are like this unprepared going into a war with China, we're going to be in foul shape. So at least this time it's Iran. It's not going well, but we can try to recover from it. But it may be the wake-up call that we needed.
Maybe so, but my question is, folks, because we've been saying this for years, and clearly everybody, as we all know, as the detractors are about to say, the government knows far more than us two goofy YouTubers on the internet. But I still have to ask the question, against the omnipotent all-knowing of the mighty federal government, where in the world was the preparation for this over the last 4 years? We have watched drone warfare in Ukraine evolve into a well-fleshed-out doctrine and a complete change in modern warfare. 96 out of 100 Russian soldiers killed in Ukraine every day are killed by drones. It's completely supplanted the way that wars have been fought over prior decades and the last era of war, and it's completely uprooted it and changed the face of it entirely. And yet in the last administration, we saw no push whatsoever to change military doctrine to factor in the brand new and very present threat of drone warfare at every level, and we've seen that in the current administration, they have taken absolutely no focus or concern on preparing our armed forces for the next stage of warfare, which is drone warfare. This is proving such a humongous gap in our offensive and defensive capabilities that it is quite literally an Achilles heel that could upend us if we find ourselves in another war in the future and we do not factor this in or account for it correctly. It is a humongous blunder that requires for the U.S. government to take any and all actions necessary at this point to fix this issue and to render it a non sequitur problem, given the fact that we hopefully would have some form right now, today, not in a year and not in 4 years, not in 10, today, some form of effective drone defense at a minimum and drone offensive capabilities at the level that the armed forces of Ukraine have. If we do not have that within the next 2 years, we are screwed if we go into another war again with how this has gone with Iran so far. But moving us on out of that, we do have to talk about the situation over here on the home front. As many of y'all have heard here on this channel, we've talked about the situation in the Middle East and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz being significantly detrimental to oil markets around the entirety of the world, in WTI crude markets and in Brent crude markets. From what we've been able to hear today, to back that information up, we did get reports today from Bloomberg, and specifically from Jeff Curry, who is a significant analyst on this topic, that oil storage tanks in the United States will most likely run empty somewhere in the 4th of July period, or sometime around early July. We've largely been stating that here recently on the channel, as it is quite obvious that with the Middle East being cut off and Europe having no available supply of oil, they will have to come to the United States and find oil here. The United States only produces 13.5 million barrels of crude a day, and the United States of America consumes 20 million barrels of crude every day. That means that the United States, in crude oil figures, is actually at a deficit of around 7 million barrels of crude a day, roughly. And with the Europeans arriving, that means that that deficit of 7 million a day, which is eating into U.S. strategic oil reserves, is going to be absolutely devoured by the voracious appetite of the Europeans, which have to import almost all of their oil and energy needs from abroad, because they have no way to be able to account or produce their own oil, as they do not have any naturally existent oil fields of a large enough size to completely produce the amount that they consume. This is becoming a pretty concerning sort of an issue, and it does appear that many people are talking about what may be coming down the pipe, not a pun intended, on this entire situation with the oil shortage and the oil crisis that does appear to be growing before us at this time right now. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so the analysts are starting to sound the alarm a little bit, because the U.S. is currently draining the strategic oil reserve, which is intended for times of war. They're currently draining that to try to stave off the rising oil prices globally. So that's part of the problem. And also, we just got word literally 30 minutes ago that a new report has come out that U.S. oil product exports have jumped to a record 8.2 million barrels per day. That's what we're exporting, by the way. Just for context, the U.S. produces about 13 million barrels per day domestically here in the United States, and we're exporting 8.2 million barrels out of the country. So, I mean, that's a little bit concerning on its face right there. We're exporting a hell of a lot of oil that we might need ourselves simultaneously while we're draining the strategic oil reserve. So that seems a bit concerning. So now the analysts are saying that draining the U.S. oil stocks might lead to shortages by early July if this keeps up and nothing changes. So what happens? 55% said the U.S. will probably have oil shortages soon, while 34% said the U.S. will end up forcing the Strait of Hormuz open and the problem will resolve that way. And 4% said Iran will probably open the strait voluntarily. So the one option I can guarantee you is not going to happen. Iran is not going to open the strait voluntarily. When they created that whole strait authority to control the strait, that was their version of saying we're never letting it go. So Iran's not going to do that voluntarily. The only way to fix this situation is to use force. That's the only way to fix it at this point. Previously, we might have been able to take a different route, but we've gotten too far down the rabbit hole. And at this point, ground action is the only thing that's going to open the Strait of Hormuz. So that's going to be probably the situation we're looking at here. But also, in the meantime, though, I would say it's very unwise to be draining the strategic oil reserve. That's very, very unwise. And unfortunately, I think the U.S. at the minimum will have either extremely high gasoline prices that keep rising, that's at the minimum, or even worse, we actually could see a real shortage of petroleum products here in the United States because we're exporting too much and draining the stocks. So, I hate to say it, but I'm with the 55%. I think we could be looking at a bit of a crisis by early July, like the analysts are also suggesting. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll be with the 55%. This is going to turn into an oil crisis with significant physical shortages reaching the United States probably within the next several months. The situation is pretty tough at the moment in the international markets, and I do have to remind everyone once again that we live within realities that are set in stone. There is no opinion as to whether the U.S. is fine because we produce a lot of oil in our borders and screw Europe. We work on a globalist economic system and a globalist economic model. That means that we have to face the reality and the fact that most commodities, like crude oil, are traded, bought, sold, consumed, and produced on that globalist market stage, not on the national one. The United States of America, according to the reports from the U.S. Department of Energy, actually looks pretty high on the hog, but I'm about to have to break this one right here. If you look at the graphs that we can see right here, the United States is generally a net exporter of around 2 million barrels per day of petroleum products. But I have to say, folks, there's a little bit of a devil in the wordage here, because this is petroleum products. This is not crude oil. The United States consumes about 20 million barrels of petroleum products every day. The United States, according to the Department of Energy, produces 20.15, actually meaning that we, according to this graph, produce a 1-to-1 amount of the exact amount of petroleum products that the United States would need. Here's the problem with this, however. If we actually go and look at the U.S. Energy Information Administration right here, and we go and look at the amount of crude oil that the United States produces, the United States right now is only producing 13.6 million barrels of crude a day. The reason why people believe, and a lot of government officials love to show this graph and misrepresent it a great deal, the reason why a lot of people believe that we actually produce as much oil as we consume is because petroleum products includes liquefied natural gas. The United States doesn't use 7 million barrels of liquefied natural gas a day. That's the net. The larger part of what we export these days isn't crude oil, it's mostly liquefied natural gas. We're the largest producer of it in the world right now. So that means that the United States is consuming, if we go and pull this up, how much crude oil does the U.S. consume a day? It should be around 19 to 20 million. Actually, sorry, correction. It is actually pretty much the whole volume. 20 million barrels of petroleum products per day, but we actually want to find crude. So let me see if I can find the crude number here, because I had a chart a while ago that actually did show that up front. Let me see here. Oil, petroleum, let's see. Oh, man. So they're going to make this very hard. So, dang, well, they don't give the exact number right here, do they? I put crude oil. I wish I could find the other graph. We consume 13.6, just to cut this down because I do have the graph memorized. We consume 13.6 million barrels of crude oil a day just in transportation, meaning that most of our crude oil production would be eaten up, basically all of it, in one day by cars traveling around the country. Y'all getting to work and getting home every day basically eats up most of the oil that we produce here in this country. Then industry consumes about another 7 million barrels of oil, and the commercial sector consumes about another, I think it's like 1 to 1.5 million barrels of oil a day. So in short, it's about 19 million barrels or so, if I'm doing the rough math right in my head. About 19 barrels of crude a day is needed to run this country. We only produce domestically 13.6 million barrels of oil a day. Yeah. So we're clearly running a deficit there.
And also keep in mind, that's just the direct effect. Like, you know, the media constantly focuses on the effect that a lack of crude oil, gasoline, and stuff like that. They always focus on the main direct consequence of this entire situation. That is a very important aspect of it because, of course, that affects the transportation of goods to the stores to sell it. I think that's known as final mile transportation to the stores from the distribution centers. That's very important, which affects prices of pretty much everything. But nobody really focuses on, and we've gone over this a couple of times, but nobody really focuses on the major secondary consequences, which is going to be the fertilizer prices. That's a big one because that affects food supplies. So not only is transportation going to be going through the roof because the diesel is going through the roof as well, but the actual source of the food before it even gets transported with those inflated costs is going to be at jeopardy of a lower supply than usual while demand stays the same, which means by definition there will be a shortage, and that's a big problem because I believe right now, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Enforcer, but I think right now, I think it's planting season, isn't it?
For some crops, it would be, but it depends on what type of crop.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing in the news right now is a lot of farmers are trying to buy fertilizer and they're realizing the cost of fertilizer is so expensive they simply can't afford to get it, so their yields are going to get reduced. So whatever crops they were going to grow, they're going to have a greatly reduced yield because they can't get the fertilizer because it costs too much. Also, like here's the problem. So, even for the farmers that can afford it, they can't really just get it immediately because there's a chokehold right now on it because it can't get through the Strait of Hormuz, and a lot of the fertilizer comes from there. So that's a big problem as well. Also, another aspect, it's going to affect everything from plastics. I'm already seeing right now, there's another report that came out saying that packaging, like car components that are made of plastics, they're already starting to feel a bit of a supply crunch because they can't get those same polyethylenes to create these plastics. So that's a problem as well. So it's just a lot. Like there's a lot of things that cascade out of this one problem right here, which is why we keep harping on the Strait of Hormuz. Everything else at this point, in my opinion, is kind of secondary. Like the whole nuclear thing, all this other stuff with Iran, is kind of secondary to the Strait of Hormuz compared to all these other cascading consequences that are piling up one on the other.
I would certainly say so. It's our most direct and serious issue at the moment. It's the one that's going to affect us the quickest and the worst in terms of the time frame. So this is the top priority right now of the moment for the U.S. government to be able to try and fix this, at least at a minimum. But the truth of it is, folks, there is no way to look at this, and there is no way to, I guess you could say, split the hair. The U.S. is going to be running out of oil about that time in July, and we're most likely going to start seeing that there are physical oil shortages in this country, and most likely throughout the entirety of the Western world as a result of the blockade on the Hormuz, which still isn't being challenged, broken, or changed. So, unfortunately, that is a reality of life at this point, and hopefully we'll be able to see that we somehow weather through it better than we could otherwise, but of course we'll have to wait and see on that one. But moving us on out of that little bit of news, we do have other news that's come out of the Middle East over the course of this day, and hopefully some news that might be a little bit more positive, but I hate to tell y'all, don't hold your hopes up. It's either neutral or not really that great sounding. But nevertheless, before we get on into the rest of this news in the Middle East and also from around the rest of the world, including Asia and also Europe and the United States, I do want to say that I have to thank everyone greatly for watching so far tonight. We had a peak viewership tonight of 19.5 thousand people, and 89,000 people have watched this stream so far. We're about to be getting on into the rest of the news here in a moment, but to thank everyone so far for spending y'all's time here and hopefully enjoying our news coverage for as good as it can be, having to report the good, the bad, and the ugly, we're going to be taking a minute to get to chit-chat with a couple of y'all and answer 3 questions from the chat. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first super chat is going to go to none other than B. Justin. And thank you very much, Justin, for that very generous $100 support, by the way. And we appreciate that very much. That is the largest super chat of the night. And Justin said, for provisions, coffee, petrol, and food, which are all inflated, by the way, to keep you to delivering factual news. And one from the chat, if you can, from Brian.
And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you for support, Brian. And I gotta say, thank you for the provisions fund, for the coffee, the petrol, and the food. Nowadays, folks, those things cost a lot. And B. Justin's super chat right there is going to help us to be able to eat 2 days. 2 days worth of food, and then we'll have to come knocking again. But I got all jokes aside.
I feel like we're coming around. You know how we were making fun of China like a while back for sauteing the rocks. Like you remember that they were like sauteing and stir frying rocks, and they were like sucking on the rocks. Like you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, man, I feel like we're coming around to that too. I feel like we might have laughed a little too soon, possibly at China for doing that. I feel like feels like that might be coming around to us.
Man, honestly, it kind of does feel like it's coming back around to us. But I guess we'll have to deal with it, folks. A piece of boiled chicken and 1 piece of broccoli ought to do the trick. The perfect diet is what they call that. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much for enjoying our news coverage. We're trying our best, and I got to say, folks, I'm sorry that we don't have anything better to report. like we wake up every day and we're hoping that it gets better, and it's not, and we have to work with what we have. If we didn't, we would be living in la la land. So I thank you so much for enjoying our news nonetheless. I hope you all understand, if we had something positive to report, we would report it. It's killing me these days, folks, to have to wake up every day and literally watch the situation continue to get worse, because I would like to hear that it's getting better, because some people might be a little hard pressed to understand this one, but we are Americans as well. We would like to hear good news, because if we're saying that the economy is getting bad for y'all, it's also getting bad for us as well, because we're all on the same boat, which is the US boat, or generally the Western boat, if you want to look at it that way. So I wish we had something good to report, but, it is what it is these days, and we just have to report what we have. But I do thank you incredibly for the support and enjoying it nonetheless, and we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Also, by the way, for B. Justin, and also anybody else, by the way, if you had to choose, if we're breaking out the seasoning, are you going to get sweet and sour rocks, or are you going to get orange chicken rocks? Like, oh, no chicken, though. Take the chicken part out, just orange rocks. No protein, no protein. You get to chomp on a rock. I tell you what, all those hard hands guys talking about, I eat nails for breakfast. It's like, well, you'll have some nice mineralized rock for breakfast right there, I guess. But anyways, the one from the chat is going to go to Lady Temp. And thank you very much, Lady Temp, for that good live chat question in honor of B. Justin. They said, do you think it'll come to rationing and gas shortages again, like in the 70s?
I don't know. It should. Like, that would be the logical conclusion. But the thing that I have to say, and I've got to say, folks, before I say this, do not take this politically. This is raw analysis on my end, and I have to say it because it's a part of the answer. The current administration is very narcissistic in its approach to how it operates, to where it cannot portray itself in a negative image where they had a mistake and they have to roll something back, or something isn't going well. They might not even implement any sort of national fuel rationing, because that would be suggesting that things didn't go that well with the war in Iran. And instead, they might sit there and insist that everything's fine and there actually isn't any shortages at any pumps, and people are buying more gas than they ever have. And I'm not saying that to be sarcastic. I'm saying that because that's been their approach on everything overseas right now with the war, is that when something is a setback, instead of acknowledging that it's a setback, reversing course, and then trying a different approach to see if there can be some success on a different avenue, instead they just completely deny that anything's going badly. They say that it's never gone better, and it's better than ever, and everything's going great, and nothing could have been expected to be this good in the history of humankind. And so I'd have to say that generally, if we were going off of a logical approach to this, we would be assuming that fuel rationing would most likely be beginning right now, because rationing only counts if you start the rationing before you run into physical shortages. Once you run into physical shortages, rationing is completely pointless at that point, because there's nothing to actually ration anymore. So we would expect that fuel rationing should be happening right now, or within the next several weeks. And if it doesn't by then, if it is ever implemented, it will most likely be too late, or it might not be implemented at all, because that would be suggesting that the administration has made a dire mistake in its war planning, and it's going to be affecting the U.S. public, and to them, that would be akin to basically admitting defeat in the war. So we'll have to see, but if we were working off of any sort of a logical framework, to answer your question, we should be seeing fuel rationing coming around with the kind of reports that we're getting if the situation remains unchanged, but whether they will or not, we just don't know. But a big thanks to you so much for sponsoring.
I don't think it's going to be like fuel shortages like that, where it's like the alternate license plate thing. And they're like, oh, if you have this license plate, you can go get gas. It's not going to be like that, I don't think. I think it's just going to simply be the gasoline and diesel is simply so expensive that it basically prices a good amount of people simply out of buying it. I think that's going to be the problem right there. So it probably won't come around to the shortages like we had back in the day. It'll probably be a little bit different. But the bigger problem will be, like I mentioned, the fertilizer, the food supply. Also, the cost of goods going through the roof too, because transportation's gotten so expensive. That'll be a problem as well. It'll probably be a lot of secondary things instead of simply rationing the gasoline.
They could, but at the same time, though, that would completely stop the entire national economy if they did something like that. Like if they just allowed everybody to be priced out of buying fuel. Because if there's literally no fuel left, you could see prices per gallon that are in the dozens. You could see like a gallon being $40 for a gallon of gas. And if that happens, nobody in the country, because the country is car-centric, to remind everyone here, I think it's something like 90% of Americans travel to work every day and back by car. So if gas becomes completely unaffordable for people in the country, and they just allow the price to dictate who can buy it and who can, basically, what would it be? Like, at that point, it would be something like 90% or more of all car traveling workers in the workforce wouldn't be able to afford to get to work and get back. Probably even higher than that, probably like 97%. And that means that the entire national economy could grind to a halt. Like, for example, Amazon warehouses, which require people to drive there to get to work and to be able to work in the warehouse, they're not able to make it there because they literally cannot afford at that point to drive to work. They're just not making enough money to cover the cost. So the entire national economy would come crashing down if they didn't instill some sort of rationing at some point.
Possibly, maybe. Also, I see everybody saying, "Get a bike, guys. Get a bike." I don't mean to be like that guy, but if
I have
everybody
one.
like thinks, if everybody thinks, oh, let's go get bikes, and everybody starts like pouring into the bike stores to go buy bikes, you know what's going to happen then? The price of bikes is going to go through the roof because everybody's trying to go buy a bicycle all at the same time. They're like, oh, the gas is too expensive. Let's go get a bike. The bikes are going to be off the shelves, and if you can find one, they're going to be basically scalping people for the price on those bikes for a large degree. So, I mean, it's really wild. It's really wild. I've already got myself a bike, people. I'm set. I don't care about the rest of you. I got a bike already. It's all we care about is me. That's all we care about around here. You know what I mean?
I suppose, but that
No,
would be
I'm joking, by the way. I'm being sarcastic.
but that would be my answer to the live chat question, by the way. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support. Be Justin and help with this channel to keep it running. We thank you greatly for that. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, so this one goes to Fred Vreeman, who puts in a 50, and thank you very much, Fred, for that $50 support as well. And he said, whoa, boy, what a day, what a mess. If you boys could summarize for us, that would be awesome. U.S. is good on oil and crude. Alaska will help, but I can't even figure out right now where the problem really lies. It seems like a crap show. Basically, Fred, the way I see the problem, and Andrew will tell his perspective here in a second, but the way I see the problem is the U.S. is currently frozen, I think out of fear right now. They're basically frozen in place, and they simply won't take an action, good or bad, at this point. They keep stalling, and the Iranians want us to stall because they know that the longer we wait before taking action in the Strait of Hormuz, the more economic damage is going to pile up on the West and the United States, and it's going to basically achieve Iran's objectives without a fight to a large degree. So they want to stall, and the U.S. is not taking action for some reason when they should be. I mean, it's of course there's risk involved in taking action, but I mean the alternative is we just sit around and we just wait for a disaster to happen. That's the alternative. That's the problem. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that really the problems are endless at this point. It's really hard to well, it's easy to iron it down to single individuals in the government at the moment, but it's very hard to iron down which mistake is the worst at the moment, because there's been so many bad ones that have been made. It's really hard to point out a specific one. But I would say that if you had to try, it would be that the Strait of Hormuz wasn't dealt with off of the start. Many a strategic novice or armchair strategists on the internet are about to start frothing at that one and say, but we destroyed the boats! We destroyed them! And we didn't destroy the ones that we needed to. The problem right now is that we destroyed all of Iran's ocean-going vessels. The problem with that idea, though, and that approach that we had, is that didn't actually deal with the fast attack boats, which are the threat to the Strait of Hormuz. We completely didn't touch those because, unfortunately, blowing up a whole bunch of speedboats doesn't really grab headlines and doesn't make a good tweet like blowing up a bigger boat does, so we just didn't touch them, I'm guessing, for that reason. So their entire IRGC fast attack boat fleet was left intact, and also their anti-ship and mine lane capabilities as a result of that as well were left intact, and they were able to mine the Strait of Hormuz and actually physically exercise control of it on the surface to blockade it. And that was the largest mistake that we've seen so far. Militarily, as far as the air campaign went against Iran, nobody could complain. I mean, that went well. It was basically uncontested. We dealt a significant amount of damage to the Iranian government. Whether that was a good idea or not, we could argue that one. But we did deal a lot of damage to the Iranian military, which is always a beneficial thing in a conflict. However, we didn't inflict the damage where it was needed the most, which was around the strait. So basically, outside of all the other mistakes that we've had since then, that was the biggest mistake, and that's what's making us basically reap what we have sowed at this point, is that we didn't deal with that as our focal point and primary focus at the beginning of the war, and now every other problem that's come from the war has compounded from that original cardinal mistake that was made on day one for the large part. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And I got to thank you massively for the support, Fred, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I have to agree with you. It is certainly a mess. I'm hoping that at some point they get their act together and they eventually somehow turn the situation around. Because I got to tell y'all, folks, it is very, very tough for me to get on air every day and know that we're going to have to report more bad news, because that's basically all we're getting these days. It's not positive news coming out of the Middle East. It's either neutral at best, bad news at worst, and we keep having to cover that every day. And I'm hoping that someday we wake up and we see that either they start working on clearing the strait or something along those lines, and they're never doing it. And the situation is compounding each day. It's getting worse with each passing week, and we're running out of time, and they're still not working on actually fixing it. So quite the issue that we have here for sure. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running to be able to cover the news, whether it be good or bad. And hopefully we'll be able to see that we all weather through this calamity that's coming around here in the near future and make it out the other side, hopefully as well off as we were beforehand. But a huge humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to return to the news from the Middle East, cover the rest of what we have, and then we're going to be moving on into all of the rest of the news from around the world. Moving us on quickly into the area around Qeshm Island, the Iranians did report that an MQ-9, well actually air defense fire, had been activated around Qeshm last night, which was the reason for the sound of the explosions, and a video emerged today showing what appears to be the remnants of some form of a drone that was shot down over Qeshm last night.
Bro, that looks like a drop tank, right? That doesn't look like a drone. That looks like a drop tank from a plane or something, doesn't it?
It kind of does, actually. But I don't think...
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I mean, I saw little like winglets on the front of it, which was a little bit out of place. Go back to the front view of the thing. Let's see it one more time here. No, that's actually the boat. Actually, I think underneath there. So yeah, that's a drop tank.
Maybe it's got shrapnel damage all over it.
Yeah, that's a bad sign for whatever plane this came from. But yeah, I think that came from a fighter jet.
Maybe so, actually. Now that I'm looking at it, it does look like possibly a drop tank, and it does have visible shrapnel damage to it that they recovered from the waters. So might be suggesting that the Iranians fired at an aircraft, not a Reaper. Well, a manned aircraft that was somewhere around Qeshm Island last night, not an MQ-9 Reaper. We've also been able to hear as well, outside of that news, that within the middle of the Strait of Hormuz today, there was apparently a standoff between the Iranians and the Frankie Peterson, as a video posted by Iranian media outlet Press TV earlier today showed the U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, the USS Frankie Peterson, along with audio of the Iranian Sepah Navy ordering it to turn back towards the Gulf of Oman. Warship 121, which is the hull number of the Peterson, then announces that it is conducting a transit in accordance with international law, and as the video cuts to an end, the Iranian voice is heard warning all vessels in the Gulf of Oman to stay 10 miles away from any naval vessel because they're ready to open fire upon them. It is unclear if this is a previously reported engagement. U.S. Central Command has not issued a statement regarding this incident, and it's important to note that Press TV is a state-owned and controlled entity within the Islamic Republic of Iran, which does make the story somewhat questionable. Moving us on out of that information and that news, we have also been able to hear of other developments within the United Arab Emirates, as the United Arab Emirates is now rolling in what appears to be Chinese-made directed energy weapons to be able to try and deal with incoming drone threats in the future. You can actually see the laser system on top of that trailer right over there.
Yeah. You gotta love China. They're selling weapons to everybody. They're giving weapons to Iran. They're also giving weapons to the Gulf states, which are getting attacked by Iran. They're selling everybody. They're doing the the war dogs trick.
Man, China said, I'm playing both sides so that way no matter what, I always come out on top. Man, it's like...
I think that was in the Sun Tzu book, wasn't it? The Art of War. Never lose an opportunity to make profit, inshallah.
Man, I think actually the Art of War by Sun Tzu said something along the lines of, like, in chapter 5, making that money or making that bag, it said something like, sell them missiles and guns to every hoe, cause you be making cash hella good. Like, it's like, man, honestly, real deep. I gotta say, Sun Tzu was really onto something with that one. But it appears that the Chinese are providing something to everyone. China's like Santa these days. If you're out there, you're getting something. But moving us on from that, the United States also stopped an Iranian vessel from making it through the U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz today, as an FA-18 Super Hornet fired upon an Iranian-flagged vessel attempting to breach the naval blockade, according to CENTCOM. In the actual published CENTCOM report, we were able to hear the following information. U.S. forces operating in the Gulf of Oman enforced blockade measures by disabling an Iranian-flagged unladen oil tanker attempting to sail toward an Iranian port at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on the 6th of May. U.S. Central Command forces observed MT Hansa as it transited international waters en route to an Iranian port on the Gulf of Oman. American forces issued multiple warnings and informed the Iranian-flagged vessel it was in violation of the U.S. blockade. After Hansa's crew failed to comply with the repeated warnings, U.S. forces disabled the tanker's rudder by firing several rounds from the 20mm cannon of a U.S. Navy FA-18 Super Hornet launched from the USS Abraham Lincoln. Hansa is no longer transiting to Iran. The U.S. blockade against ships attempting to enter or depart Iranian ports remains in full effect. CENTCOM forces continue to act deliberately and professionally to ensure compliance. Also, Matthew, the reason why I'm racing is that we are actually way behind time, and we are having to kind of get through this.
I know it's just that you're getting unintelligible. You're going so fast. It just sounds like it's all blurring together, like you're talking so fast.
Let me actually say it in a way that would be misunderstandable. Bring in the Houthi spokesperson. Today in the satellite footage, we were able to hear in the name of Yallah, inshallah, that the USS Abraham Lincoln was spotted over the eastern coast of the nation of Oman in the name of Yallah. We were able to see that the USS Abraham Lincoln is moving at a decent speed, somewhere within the area, which does appear to be allowing for enough wind to pass over the flight deck for flight operations to be continued by the Abraham Lincoln, which is suggesting that at this moment, the USS Abraham Lincoln is conducting aerial operations in support of the ongoing blockade. Moving us on out of that, we also were able to hear that within central Iran today, there appears to have been new activity observed at Pickaxe Mountain Complex, just south of the Natanz nuclear complex. The two eastern tunnel portals had been partially blocked with dirt and rock material that would have prevented ground vehicle access from entering those tunnel portals. This is not the result of a landslide, but a deliberate effort to prevent ground vehicle access into the portals. Dirt could have been easily taken from nearby large soil piles or spoil piles. No changes to the western tunnel portals can be seen, and the Natanz nuclear complex hasn't seen any new activity either. But this is showing that the Iranians are scheming at the moment and are doing something right now around the Pickaxe Mountain facility, and the fact that they're covering up the entrances may be suggesting that they are planning on forcing the United States and continuing the war against them, and they're trying to shore up the facility to make sure that the U.S. can't get into it somehow, some way if we showed up in the area. But moving us on out of that little bit of news inside of central Iran, we also were able to hear of large explosions that rocked Western Tehran over the course of the day, according to reports from the area. We also were able to see as well that the Iranian government did put out additional statements today warning of action, as Ibrahim Rezai dismissed U.S. demands as unrealistic, saying Washington won't gain through conflict what it failed to secure in talks. He added Iran is ready to act and warned of severe regret-inducing response to any provocation. We then also were able to see a post made by one Iranian official today, MB Golubov, who said Operation Trust Me Bro failed. Now back to routine with Operation Faoui, I believe is how that be pronounced. I'm not quite sure, but the Iranians are getting quite mouthy. Quite mouthy indeed, folks. Looks to me like they're cruising for a bruising, and for some reason we're not giving it to them. But we actually have breaking news coming out at this moment right now. Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so I don't think you've covered this yet, but if you have, correct me if I'm wrong here. But we're getting some news that apparently it looks like we might have a reason for why the U.S. kind of backed out of the plan to escort ships so quickly. We're getting a report here claiming that a key Gulf state ally, which is Saudi Arabia, apparently suspended the U.S. military's ability to use its bases and airspace to carry out the operation in the Strait of Hormuz, according to two U.S. officials And that's from a mainstream news outlet. They're saying here from AZ Intel, they're saying it's from NBC, allegedly. So if that is true, that's actually quite interesting, because we've been hearing reports that Saudi Arabia has been encouraging the United States forces to take more aggressive actions on Iran to deal with the problem. And now it sounds like Saudi Arabia basically pulled the rug out from underneath us and is not letting us use their bases and airspace to do the thing they're wanting us to do. So if that's true, that's quite interesting, by the way. That's actually quite a little bit of a betrayal there if that turns out to be true. So, Enforcer, what you think?
Well, we'll have to see if we can verify that, because it seems at the moment that it seems like that might be the case, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see, of course. So I'm just gonna wait a little bit later to give any word on that, because that's shocking if that did happen. And to be honest, folks, I'd have to start drawing up what the hell that means, because this is kind of blindsiding me at this moment if this information is true. So we'll have to see. But anyways, moving on from that, it does appear that the Iranians are mouthing off, and they're cruising for a bruising. Hopefully Saudi Arabia can help us out with that. Right, RoboCop? You get what I'm getting at, Matthew? You get what I'm laying down.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Also, by the way, I'll try to do some more research into it in the meantime and try to get the actual source information and see if I can verify this with certainty. So I'll let y'all know if I get some more information.
And we'll have to see if we get more. The moving us on out of that, we were able to see that the Israelis did bomb southern Dahiya today, in Beirut in Lebanon. Nothing new there. And then also the Israelis announced that they had apparently killed Hezbollah's elite Radwan force, the commander of the elite Radwan force and his deputy, who were killed in an IDF airstrike overnight. I've never heard of the Radwan force, and I'm kind of doubting that it's elite for that reason. But what do I know? I mean, maybe a whole bunch of guys with AKs are elite somehow. I don't know, but to me, they don't really seem to be. But anyways, moving us on from that whole deal, it is time for us, folks, to finally move on to the crown jewel of the day. The crown jewel of the day over in Pakistan. As many people know, the meme has been circulating around today that at the request of Pakistan, I didn't show up to work. I microwaved my chicken nuggets at the request of Pakistan. At the request of Pakistan, we ran this stream. And it actually appears that we have more details on that whole Saudi Arabian issue before we get into this deal. So, Matthew, what do we got here? What do we got?
Okay, so apparently it is NBC News that is reporting this right here. So apparently, according to NBC News and their sources, they're saying that the president of the United States apparently surprised Gulf state allies by suddenly announcing Project Freedom to escort the ships through the Strait of Hormuz. It apparently, allegedly, according to the sources, angered the leadership inside of Saudi Arabia, and then Saudi Arabia revoked the U.S. military permission to fly aircraft from Prince Sultan Air Base southeast of Riyadh or fly through Saudi airspace whatsoever to support the efforts in the Strait of Hormuz. And apparently that is being alleged to be the exact direct reason why Project Freedom got put on pause and halted, is because the U.S. military is apparently trying to negotiate for access to Saudi Arabian airspace. That's what NBC is saying right now. Also, it says other Gulf allies were also caught off guard as well, and apparently angered a lot of Gulf state allies that apparently, at least according to the report, they're saying that the U.S. officials did not consult with the Gulf states before they launched that operation. So once again, it seems like a lack of communications led to a breakdown here and a lack of respect amongst the allies, it looks like. So eventually, we'll learn to respect our allies eventually, because we're literally getting hit with a left, a right, a jab, an undercut. I mean, we're getting pounded right now because we seem to lack respect for our allies to a large degree. So if this turns out to be true, this is quite damning. But Enforcer, what say you?
You can't disagree, though. He is certainly one hell of a deal maker. He can somehow make a situation into where we have to make a deal, even when there wasn't one that was ever needed. I gotta say, folks, I've never seen anybody turn every single situation into making a deal. I think at this point, folks, this guy could walk into a restaurant somewhere that's giving out free water and somehow piss him off enough that he has to negotiate with them to be able to get the free water. It's unbelievable. Now we're hearing that apparently our own allies are starting to cut us off in the Middle East because we're not communicating. I've been saying this for a while, folks. Y'all are now watching the direct consequence of it, that you can't treat allies like garbage, because they will eventually come back to bite you in the ass if you treat them like they're underlings that you don't have to answer to or talk to or get on your side, and it's happened again. what is this, like the ninth time that this has happened in a large fracas basically between one of our allies and the United States? This is about the ninth time in a year and a couple of months. So
Yeah, well, also just to make it clear, it also says in the article right here that apparently a White House official said in a statement that apparently regional allies were notified in advance. So the officials are claiming, the U.S. officials are saying that they were notified, but the Gulf states are claiming that they were not notified. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there between the two. So I will say this, like even if the U.S. did not give a whole bunch of notification to the Gulf states, that's pretty low for Saudi Arabia to revoke the access altogether to the airspace over something like that, especially considering that this affects them as much as it affects us, like the Strait of Hormuz situation. That's a little bit of a strange thing to do right there. It also seems like, in my opinion, seems to be a bit of a betrayal, considering that they were recently encouraging the United States forces to take action on Iran. That's a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I would suppose, but at this point, I'm going to wait for further details to come out, because if they're saying that they weren't informed, allies are eventually going to end up getting fed up enough if we keep treating them like low down henchmen that don't require any answers and they're basically our lapdogs. They're eventually, if that information's true, they're eventually going to snap back at some point. That should be expected, because if any of our allies did the same thing to us, we would expect that the United States would snap back, even if we're an allied nation to them, because of the amount of disrespect shown in not communicating properly. And the fact, if we're taking the information true that the Middle Eastern countries are saying the U.S. never communicated with us, and then the U.S. government is saying we did communicate with them, I'd have a feeling that in that exchange, the Middle Eastern countries are probably correct in saying that, because what would they have to stand to gain from fabricating a lie in that situation and then denying use of airspace as a result? They wouldn't stand to gain anything from that.
Yeah, it wouldn't seem like it. We'll have to find out, though. But that's a pretty big piece of the puzzle right there. If that turns out to be true, that might explain pretty much the entire situation from front to back, if that report turns out to be accurate. And I'm not sure if we'll ever get concrete verification of it, because it's kind of hard to get, the truth right now from anybody about anything at this point. But right now, that's what the report claims. So that's what we kind of got to work with.
Yeah, we'll have to see. But moving us on from that information there, which is bombshell news that just came out, it's now time for us to move to the crown jewel of everything that came out of Islamabad today from the Twitter account of Shahbaz Sharif. I am grateful to President Trump for his courageous leadership and timely announcement regarding the pause in Project Freedom in the Strait of Hormuz. The president's gracious response to the request made by Pakistan and other brotherly countries, particularly the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and my dear brother Crown Prince and Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman, will go a long way towards advancing regional peace, stability, and reconciliation during the sensitive period. Pakistan remains firmly committed to supporting all efforts that promote restraint and the peaceful resolution of conflicts through dialogue and diplomacy. We are very hopeful that the current momentum will lead to a lasting agreement that secures durable peace and stability in the region and beyond. And so that was the statement by the Prime Minister at the request of Pakistan. Moving us on, finally, out of most everything that pertains to the Middle East, we did get to hear that the Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi was in China today, and according to the China Foreign Minister Wang Yi, they stated that a comprehensive ceasefire is urgently needed in the Iran war. Wow. What a funny one. Meanwhile, China is giving weapons to everybody in the region. So, gotta say, folks, the Chinese love it. They dig it. They said, oh, there needs to be a ceasefire. Meanwhile, in the background with the Iranians right now in Beijing, they're going, hey, look, we got this sick new air defense system. Y'all ought to try it out. We'll give you a discount on it. And then once they get done talking to the Iranians, then they go over to the UAE. Hey, we got this sick directed energy weapon that might be able to shoot down Shaheads. You ought to buy this thing. We're selling it to you at a discount right now. Only
Man.
you.
They better ask about the warranty on that stuff. They better ask about that. I wonder how long the warranty is on that Chinese equipment. Like a week? Like, what are they like? We'll guarantee it operates for 1 week. They're like, wait a minute, 1 week? You mean 1 year? And they're like, no, 1 week. And they're like, it's like, I don't think the warranty is too good on that equipment.
Man, and then like everyone's like, well, what about the equipment that India used against Pakistan that got blown up? Don't ask about that. Those people are like really dumb. Like they don't know how to use it. Like
It's operator error. It's operator error. That's all it was. It was just a little bit of a problem with the people operating it. You'll do fine though with it. Just trust us. Trust us, bro.
But what about all those radars that you gave to Venezuela that didn't even work? Oh, those were just those were just the showroom
Counterfeits.
models.
They were counterfeits. They didn't buy them from the dealership. They bought them from some secondhand source. You know, people do modifications on those things. You can't trust those modifications. You got to buy it straight from the source.
They bought them from Burma. Clearly, they're not going to work. These will work, though, and you ought to buy them. We are marking up a 70% discount on this one right now, just for you. You are our special little guy. Like China's saying that to everybody individually in the country, in the region, off on their own. Like they bring them off to the side and go, "You are our special little guy. We want to see you succeed." 70% discount on this laser weapon. You can buy it.
Man, meanwhile, everybody buying it, including the Iranians and also the Gulf states, are going, "Oh, look, we got the brand new equipment. Look." And then they put it to use and they're like, "This shit don't work worth a damn." It's like, we got ripped off, man. I need a refund. And China's like, "No refund."
Man, like when this whole deal started, man, Xi Jinping brought over whoever took over after Khomeini. He was like, "Look, man, special discount just for you. You're our special guy." And then they went over to the UAE, and then like Xi Jinping had like 2 pimp rings on one hand. He's like, "Listen, special discount just for you, 70% off. We want you to succeed." And by the time they make it to Saudi Arabia, man, like Xi Jinping's wearing like a pimp hat. Every single finger's got a giant gold ring on it. He's got like gold grills. And he's like, "Listen, just for you, a special deal. You're a special little guy." Like, it's a couple air defense system, 70% off.
And if you order my system right now and input the coupon code CCP 2026, you'll get an extra 10% off if you order it now, and free shipping and handling.
Man, and we'll even send tech advisors to help you know how to not use it. Like, come on, it's a deal you can't refuse. Man, you know, and another thing, man, like, after all this, China's going to make an infomercial, and Xi Jinping is going to be on it with, like, white dyed hair. He's going to be saying, "I pay all my lab coats and scientists. I make nothing. Zilch. Nada. Well, why do you do it, baby Xi? Because I'm selfless like that. I'm heartless."
Baby G. That's like that might be like a good stage name or something like that. Call him Baby G.
Man, honestly, man, it's pretty good. But moving us on out of this whole joke about what's going on in the Middle East with the weapons shipments, we do have some interesting news today, at least in terms of foreign policy developments for North Korea. North Korea has officially today, in a party Congress, removed the goal of unification with South Korea from the DPRK's constitution. The constitution in North Korea is basically symbolic. It doesn't really mean anything. But the symbolism of having the goal of reunification with South Korea in the Constitution has been a constant throughout all of North Korea's history, ever since it was created in the late 40s. It has now been removed under Kim Jong-un's government. We're believing that this is because they are moving away from the reunification efforts that have been a primary mainstay of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il's reign in North Korea, and they're now moving on into strict isolation, not even attempting to reunify or even keep up a dialogue of reunification with South Korea. This might be reversed at some point in the future if foreign policy requires, but for now, they're completely abandoning the concept, even at the symbolic level. Moving us on from that, we have also been able to hear some significant news out of the United States of America's capital today. We have been able to hear that according to a new a new release by the White House on counterterrorism strategy, they have now labeled Europe as an incubator of terror threats and have also stated that they are an incubator of the terror threats, and it is unacceptable that wealthy NATO allies can serve as financial, logistical, and recruitment hubs for terrorists. So apparently now we're claiming that Europeans are as dangerous as the Middle East. I gotta say though, I don't mean to bring this up, but being this critical of Europe is kind of a little bit hokey. I mean, you know, wasn't it just like last month that we had like 20 terror attacks that reached national headlines in this country, a couple of bomb threats at a few U.S. military bases across the country, shootings in malls and bars and whatnot that were literally terror attacks? Like, isn't that kind of a little hard to say that Europe is worse off than we are in that kind of a respect? I mean, the U.S. at this point, as far as domestic terror that's inspired by overseas groups goes, is as bad or worse than Europe. So I feel like listing the Europeans as some sort of an incubator of terror threats is pretty hypocritical. It's basically the pot calling the kettle black, because if they're bad off, we're as bad off as they are right now. So I don't really get this one. But anyways, moving on from that. it is time for us to get out of the news in the U.S. Capitol today, because we have been able to hear of other significant news going on in Europe. And we've been able to hear that there has been quite a lot going on in Moscow. The Russians are getting scared because overnight, as many of y'all would know, the Russians couldn't resist breaking the unilateral Ukrainian ceasefire, and they ended up conducting drone attacks on Ukraine, and y'all wouldn't believe it, folks. One of the drones ended up slamming into a kindergarten in the middle of the night. Of course, there's no kids in a kindergarten in the middle of the night, and no people there as well. So thank God nobody was wounded or killed in that attack. However, it is a blatant violation of the Ukrainian unilateral ceasefire, and Zelensky has said today that the gloves are off, and according to Zelensky, they're not going to be holding back. After Russia broke the ceasefire in Ukraine, Ukraine had declared for yesterday, the Ukrainian president said Kyiv considers itself freed from the unilateral truce declared by the Kremlin ahead of Saturday's victory parade in Moscow. The Russians started to panic, and they're already announcing that they're going to try and blow up the central government buildings in Kyiv, and every single diplomat from a foreign country needs to leave Kyiv immediately because they're going to be trying to level the entirety of the central area of the city. It also appears that this has caused a decent amount of panic up at Moscow as well. Quite a lot, actually. They have relocated a whole other group army's worth of air defenses around the city. And right now, this is our going map that we got from War Translated of every active air defense system around the city.
Geez, and even with all this, something will still get through.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, you still have to have competent operators of this equipment. I mean, that's a thing as well. Also, it looks like all this is mainly S300 and S400 systems based on the labels here on the map.
No, the green ones are Pansirs. That's what the P stands for.
Ah, so it looks like the outer perimeter is S300, S400, and the inner perimeter is those Pansirs.
Yes, that is how they have it set up right now. Man, when I clicked over on this map, my first reaction was, yeah, man, like, honestly, it's an insane amount of air defense. This is basically, like, also, if y'all are wondering, where in the world did this come from? The very little air defenses that they had left in the rest of the country were all relocated to Moscow. So right now, every region of Russia is without missile-based air defense in the western area of the country. You can only imagine, folks, the success rate that's going to come on the 9th of May if the Ukrainians just completely ignore the Victory Day parade and start blowing up everything else in the country. They're going to have a damn jackpot on the 9th of May. And honestly, I mean...
You see the quote? You see the quote over there in the thing from Zelensky over there. He mentioned that right there in the quote from Zelensky. He's saying that this opens up a whole range of additional opportunities for what he calls long-range sanctions on the Russians. So, I mean, Ukraine, maybe this was the idea. Maybe Ukraine creating the fear that the Ukrainian forces might attack the V-Day parade. They thus caused Russia to move all this air defense away from all these other areas that the Ukrainians wanted to attack. And now they're vulnerable. So now they can attack it without much resistance.
One thing, folks, one of the rules from Sun Tzu's Art of War, I know this is actually a rule, usually take the path of least resistance if it is possible. Because of all the Russian air defenses that were spread out throughout the country being moved to Moscow, the path of least resistance to the highest success rate for Ukrainian attacks on the 9th of May are going to be everywhere in Russia except for Moscow. That opens up every oil refinery, every major industrial site, every single steel plant, every Russian military base, every single port, every single rail yard, every single maintenance and repair facility, every single car factory, every weapons factory, every missiles factory, every explosives factory, every single fertilizer plant, which those are incredibly important, not just for agricultural reasons. It opens up literally everything in Russia to being hit with basically no opposition from air defense at all. That is why the Ukrainians are not going to attack the Victory Day parade. They're going to attack everything else except for Moscow. I'm putting money on that. They might send a couple of token drones towards Moscow in the middle of the night after the parade, but they are not going after Moscow on the 9th of May. They're going for everything else on the night of the 8th of May and the night on the 9th of May after the parade. That's what they're going to do because that would make the most sense. That is the most strategically sound option, and that is going to produce the most damage. I gotta say, the Ukrainians here, folks, have run a masterclass on deception. Now, unlike the U.S. Office of the President, which people say is playing 5D chess, which is basically just asinine ridiculousness. This is how you actually do deception. You make the enemy believe that you're going to blow up Moscow. They move every single one of their defenses to Moscow, and then you go and attack everything else that's now undefended. That is how deception actually works in war. And the Ukrainians are about to show us, folks, an absolute masterclass, a master stroke, if you want to call it that, on how to actually fight a war and win it. But man, I need to find that Simpsons meme of that guy slapping that kid in the back of the head and going, "See, this is how you fight a war, kid." Because honestly, this is how you would fight it.
Yeah, it's definitely a smart move. Now, one thing I will say this, one thing that would not be smart, if Ukraine actually attacks the Victory Day parade, that would actually not be smart. I will say that. That would be very unwise, actually. Now that we're seeing the plan come together, though, and also Zelensky's statements, I think it's becoming clear that Ukraine probably does not intend to attack the parade, and they probably just did that to redirect the air defenses. That's my guess.
Oh yeah, that's definitely what they did. And also, folks, the Russians are going to be eating crow that day, because if the Ukrainians don't attack the parade and they attack everything else in the country, the Russians said they would blow up central Kyiv if they attacked Moscow. If Ukraine doesn't attack Moscow on that day, the Russians don't have a direct way to bring their threat to life by saying the Ukrainians did attack Moscow, now we attack Kyiv. They can't do that. And then also on top of that, if the damage is so bad across the rest of the country that they would then try and justify on that, they wouldn't, because that would make it look like they just conducted a huge strategic blunder, because they'd have to admit to the Russian public, no, Moscow wasn't attacked, but the whole rest of the country's on fire, and for that reason, we are going to try and blow up central Kyiv, which makes it sound like the Russians just suffered an egregious defeat at the hand of the Ukrainian forces in terms of their deception, and also the attacks that then followed after the deception had been conducted successfully. This is going to be something else. I'm not going to lie, folks. If there's anything to look forward to right now, it's what's going to be happening on the 9th of May. We are going to watch a drone attack that we have never seen before on this country, and it's going to cause so much damage, it's going to be unbelievable everywhere but Moscow. But a lot of people are currently talking about this whole deal right now and how the Russians might respond. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we are hearing that Russia has ordered foreign diplomats to leave Kyiv preemptively, as Russia is threatening to strike decision-making centers inside of Kyiv, which could mean the Verkhovna Rada. It could mean a lot of different buildings, possibly. We're not totally sure which ones they're talking about, but they mean the top-end decision-making centers inside the capital of Ukraine. That's what Russia is threatening to hit. So what are your thoughts? 60% said Putin will probably strike the Ukrainian government. That's probably what he's going to do. 30% said Putin is simply bluffing to deter attacks. And 7% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And this is a pretty serious threat. I will say that. They're ordering diplomats to leave Kyiv, so that means the threat could be imminent. But I think Putin is bluffing with this. I think he's bluffing to deter attacks. But ultimately, though, I don't think Ukraine's going to attack the Victory Day parade. I think they're going to skip on it now that I see their full plan coming together. And they probably never intended to attack in the first place after seeing what they did with the air defense strategy here. So there probably won't be any strikes on Kyiv, and there won't be any strikes on the parade either. And it'll probably just fizzle out like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's probably going to fizzle out as well. I don't think the Ukrainians are going to attack Moscow. Truth be told, folks, that would be a ridiculous kind of an idea to execute on at this point. The Russians have made this into a hill they're willing to die on, and the Ukrainians can basically cut their legs out from under them without even fighting them on that hill. So why do it? It wouldn't make any sense in the larger strategic outlook. Sure, it would cancel the parade, or, have everyone running from the bleachers, but beyond that, it wouldn't really do anything as far as winning the war. If anything, it might make the war a little bit worse, at least on the Ukrainian side. So, completely avoid attacking Moscow, attack everything else that's completely undefended, and that actually brings the war to a faster conclusion, more on Ukraine's end than Russia's, and also, it makes sure that the Russians can't follow through with their threat. It's a win-win, and also on top of that, folks, we already know that the Ukrainians are what I like to call, in a funny way, in a joking way, scam artists. They pull scams on the Russians every day. They basically use their own mentality against them to get the best of them. And much like they did scamming the Russians out of about $500,000 US, pretending like the Russian volunteer commander was assassinated, and then also doing the little pop-up drone attack during Operation Spiderweb. This whole deal here is clearly a deception the Russians are falling for tooth and nail. They're about to go and attack everything else in Russia, and the Russians are going to be wishing that they had their air defenses in the rest of the country to be able to at least try and defend somewhat from what's about to be happening. We might see that this ends up being the largest Ukrainian drone attack of the war, and the damage might be irreparable for the Russians if it goes as well as the Ukrainians are expecting it to, and as well as I would be thinking it might go at this point. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on from that, and it is time for us to talk about everything else that happened in Moscow today. We were able to see that some footage came out from the prior attack that showed that a drone had actually hit a high-rise of a Russian vlogger. Well, a live streamer more so. Looks maxing, GigaChat maxing, all that stuff, and you could see the damage up there on the building a little bit, but he didn't want to film it because I'm sure he's scared of the FSB coming and knocking on his door, if it's still left. We also were able to hear that in the middle of Moscow, news came out today that 15 oblasts have canceled their victory parades. Every single one on the border obviously did. The Saratov region canceled theirs. The Ryazan, Nizhny Novgorod, and Tuvashia oblasts also canceled their parades. So literally almost every oblast south of Moscow canceled their parades for the larger part. Even St. Petersburg canceled their parade. Crazy. Well, actually, sorry, the St. Petersburg is still going on. Leningrad regions is not going to be happening. Neither is Novgorod or Pskov's. Crazy. Nobody is having a victory parade in Russia except for St. Petersburg and Moscow. Crazy, Blair.
Yeah, they didn't need it. They didn't need it anyway. I mean, it's not like Russia's had a victory in ages, so, no need for that.
It's defeat day, Blair. Yes, let's have a parade.
Defeat? Man, some people begin excited about defeat day.
Oh, hold up, folks. What's that? Oh, no. I just heard, folks, that Weinstein busted out of his cell and he's on his way here. Oh, God. But anyways, moving on from that. We did get to see that the one part of the Russian air column that will be present in the parade is practicing today, which is just basically a flight of Su-25s. Wow. Magical.
Somebody flying American colors.
Man, look at that. They're flying that damn red, white, and blue, boy. Like, honestly. But that's the flag of Russia, Matthew. It's white, blue, and red.
Oh, I know.
I just had to make sure to make it clear because, someone's about to come in the comment and be like, look at this idiot. It's like, it's a joke. So take it easy, everybody. But, anyways, moving on from that. It is time for us to get on out of the actual events in the city. And we were able to hear that the Russians, they're preparing mobile fire groups. Moscow is preparing for the parade, and now they're not only adding on to the dozens of pantsiers and the dozens of S-300s and 400s around the city, now they're preparing mobile fire groups with machine guns mounted on technicals to be able to try and counter the drones. Victory Day parades have been canceled en masse throughout the country, just like we showed y'all, and for what we know, fireworks have also been canceled in Kursk, Bryansk, Belgorod, and Saratov regions as well. So they are having no fun on the border regions. Moscow is going to be having a little bit of fun, but with so much security, it may as well be an entire army based around Moscow at this point. Boo-hoo-hoo. So sad for the Russians. So sad for them. Moving us on from that, though, we did get to see that there was an ongoing drone attack again tonight. Oh, heavens be. A real tragedy here. And we do understand that the Chernigov region, there are still more than 100 drones to Bryansk and further to the rear. What a tragedy for them. In Saratov, we also were able to see that attacks were conducted today, and we were able to get a little clip of that.
Это не дрон, братан. Это НЛО, ебать!
Oh, ебать?
Это НЛО, оно крутится, ты не видишь, блядь?
He said, is it an effing UFO?
Actually, he said it was an effing drone. He said drona, which is drone in Russian.
He said a UFO at some point in here, because I got the translation earlier.
Well, he said, that is like, it's not a drone, brother. Oh, he did say, he said, it's not a drone. He said, it's not a drone. Brother, it's a UFO. Holy, your brother, he started freaking out. Yeah, you're actually right. Sorry.
I'll take an apology.
I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'm greatly sorry. As of this time
No forgiveness. No forgiveness. You're going to go down as a jerk in history. That's what you're going to go down as. They call him a jerk. That's what they call him. It's not like chicken. It's not jerk chicken. It's just jerk.
As of this time, effective immediately, I, the Enforcer, am resigning the office of the Enforcer, and will be handing it over to my successor, as I have been charged in the UFO Gate scandal. But anyways, moving aside of the rest of the clip, they didn't debate whether it's a UFO or not, apparently.
Plot twist is not a UFO.
It's a drone.
С нами ничего не будет, ты мне скажи, блядь, просто. С нами ничего не будет, ебать.
Well, it's in the clip, but, Saratov was under attack, believe. But anyways, moving us on from that, it is time for us to move on and into all of the news that came out of the front lines of Ukraine today. But before we move on from that, I do have to tell y'all, folks, that a lot of the polling groups in Russia have stopped releasing the polling results because apparently Putin's approval rating is falling so low that not even the Russian propagandists can try and gloss over it, and they're just not releasing the approval polls anymore on Putin. And apparently a lot of people are wondering what's going to be the next move now that we're hearing that Putin's becoming so unpopular, not even the Russian propagandists can hide on how unpopular the guy is becoming. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so Vladimir Putin's facing coup attempts, they say. He's also facing a sinking approval. I'm not even sure how they're getting those ratings inside of Russia, but I mean, even with the ones they're able to get somehow from somewhere, they look ugly. So what do you think Putin's next move will be after this revelation right here that apparently nobody likes him? 55% said more civil crackdowns and censorship. That's what's coming next. 21% said a major escalation on NATO, meaning a distraction from the internal crises inside of Russia, and 19% said a major Russian government purge. So the purge is an ongoing thing. That's not a singular event. That's just something that happens in the background, and they keep that kind of running like a little bit of a background program a little bit. So occasionally, people go by the wayside. We just saw that the chemical fella inside of Russia that does their chemical warfare, he just went by the wayside yesterday. They found him in his apartment face down. So, he kind of went sort of bye-bye. But I would say generally what the next move would be for Putin is probably more civil crackdowns and censorship. He's already forcing people into the Max Messenger app, which is state-sponsored. He's already doing that. But on top of that, though, he's also turning the internet off and on the same way you turn off your kitchen light switch. He keeps turning off the internet inside of Moscow. He also keeps shutting off VPNs. He's trying to control everything. He's basically trying to set up the Chinese Great Firewall inside of Russia to a large degree. So he's such a grand chess master. He has to use censorship. He has to use all these smoke and mirrors because, even though he's a chess master, he's a dictator at the end of the day. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say that I would think that there's going to be more civil crackdowns. I think, honestly, unfortunately, there might be something that happens like what happened in Iran if it gets bad enough. I would think that at this point he'd be willing to pull out the army and start massacring people in the thousands to try and keep control of the country, possibly, because things are not going well. And the great old chess master, the real man, Blair, it definitely doesn't look questionable riding that horse shirtless, way back in the day. He's definitely stepped in it, and it's not going well at all. It's going very badly for them. So I'd have to say there's probably going to be a lot more crackdowns and censorship, and if bad came to worse, we might see the massacres start throughout the country to be able to try and keep the situation under control for as long as possible. Either that would put the situation down to where you would retain power, or it would inflame the situation if somehow they didn't control the story on that and they didn't control the flow of information. Which may also be the reason why they forced everyone to go over to the Russian messaging app, or whatever that thing is called. I forgot what it's called.
Max Messenger.
Max Messenger, that might be why they pushed all of them over there onto it, so that way they can try and control the messaging if something like that has to happen. But it's probably going to get to a point to where it gets very close to massacres or gets into massacres at this point, because clearly the Russian government is on the brink of collapse due to economic pressures, military pressures, and even the pressure of just the common citizenry at this point. But moving us on out of that, it is time for us to get on into the front lines in Ukraine. And we've got a lot to report here, folks. We're going to make sure to get through it as detailed and accurately as we can. We're going to take all the time we have, which is about 14 minutes, to be able to make sure that we can cover this the best we can. There's not a whole lot here today, so we will be able to cover it during that time pretty fairly. The Ukrainian drone attacks did land some significant strikes within Lugansk, which we were able to see in this clip right here.
Короче, над Луганском их сегодня рой. Просто рой.
I feel like that soccer very erotic voice you have there.
You said that your football team is going to be going up against Paris tomorrow. Tell me how you're going to beat Paris. Wow, a very erratic voice you have there, Mr. Translator.
and then he smiled and blinded everybody with his bright white teeth.
Bro, he smiled at everyone in the room, started yelling, "My eyes!" Man, look, it's oh man.
Да давно пора дать. В случае чего. Вот каждый день. По всем городам. Руси-матушки. Пора, дайте. Бить нужно первым, как говорил Владимир Владимирович. В страхе. Чтоб сидели сразу от себя.
Oh, someone rattling a trash can outside. Someone's dumpster diving out here.
Man, somebody's robbing him while he's watching the crew go by. He's getting robbed. You don't even know it.
Bro, somebody's trying to run out of his house. They're fighting the gate, like, to try and open it. They're, like, yanking it around and stuff. It's still going. What the hell is that?
Damn. This dude's got bigger problems than that drone flying by.
Man, right now, man, a masked burglar is literally tiptoeing behind him with a crowbar to get into his house while he's looking up in the sky. He's like, look, it's the meanwhile, the damn, like, radiator's getting ripped out of the wall by some fiend in the background.
Or somebody's walking around the dude's kitchen or something. Like, there's literally footsteps behind him. Like, this dude's actively getting, like, mugged and robbed. He has no clue.
Man, this guy is hypnotized by the sound. That's right. He said, look at the run. It's, like, hardly noisy at all. Meanwhile, man, there's glass breaking behind him. Someone's, like, launching themselves through his window. And he's still looking up. I think it's the run, I swear to God. Let me see if I can... Meanwhile, man, some guy is coming out with a wheelbarrow filled with all of his precious belongings right out of his back door, like leaving the place. Oh my lord! Also, we got this clip as well. Opa, блядь!
Oh dang!
And that's the end of that clip, блядь. Moving aside from that, we have also been able to hear some more significant news from around the region. Moving us on into our location unknowns, we did get the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours. And according to the casualty report, it does appear that the losses today were pretty good. According to Miss Disa, keeper of the records, 2 Bobcats were lost. Hey, look at that!
Oh yeah, I love to see it.
And also, 92 artillery systems is the 9th highest daily loss. 282 supply trucks and fuel tanks is tied as the 5th highest daily loss. And the new category includes the 12 ground robotic complexes, which is tied with the 3rd of May for the first reporting day. And an error, there was actually 0 Bobcats. 2 was yesterday. Aw. Well, anyways, moving on from that, 1,050 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. Along with 5 APCs, 282 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 92 artillery pieces, 2,031 drones, 5 MLRSs, 1 cruise missile, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and that was it. Pretty decent day, all things around, but sadly, no 2 Bobcats. That was actually misinformation. Moving us on out of that, we also were able to see that up in the Vovchansk area, the Ukrainians were making sure to target and hit the Russians with a nice summer song. It's the kind you'd hear at the lake. Literally, like it's literally
no music. I don't like it.
But just for 1 second, Matthew. Очень на секунду, блядь. Like, it's only a little, to let people hear the summer fun music that the Ukrainians play as they target and hit the Russian army forces just north of the town of Vovchansk. Oh, look, he come back out in the open. 300, блядь. Oh, here's another one. You know, Matthew, actually, funnily enough, I was actually on Squad today, an online video game that's multiplayer, that simulates real-life war in a game, which you can kind of say these days because it's getting close to being accurate, but I was actually playing on a Ukrainian server, Matthew, and everybody on there seemed to really know what they were doing, like on the Ukrainian team. They steamrolled the little, like, separatist force that they were fighting against, and it made me start to think, are these Ukrainian soldiers in the Ukrainian army that are playing Squad in their free time? Because they were pretty organized. Like, they were effectively organized. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
They should ban them, because that's like cheating.
Man, bro, they're about to go, oh, watch out, they're about to go on those online betting ads. Are we going to beat the shit out of a Russian army? Nah. Like, put 50,000 rubles on that one. Like,
The only downside is the Ukrainians are also pretty good hackers too, so I don't think there's any way to ban them.
Man, honestly, man, that's real. Like, man, that's real. That's valid. On God, it's valid. Also, they hit a some sort of a drone of a sort with a weird communications dish. I've never seen that before. They also hit another comms link and another one right here. Destroyed. But moving us on from that, we also were able to see some news coming out of the area of all Pokrovsk. The Ukrainians were really hitting the Russians down here. There they are, and here they go. We see them here hitting another Russian position. These memes are killing me on the bottom, man. Like, honestly, man.
These memes, I tell you, they love to meme.
Oh, a mortar. And they got it. Man, well, that's the end of that clip. But moving on from that, we also got to see that the Ukrainian 6th Ranger Special Forces unit actually stormed and cleared some Russian positions near to the town of Udachny, which I'll show you where Udachny is on this front. So here is the town of Pokrovsk. Udachny is right here. This has been a very significant battlefield of the southern flank of Pokrovsk, as the Russians have tried to cross over the railway berm, and the Ukrainians are attempting to counterattack and actually push the Russians back on the southern flank. And this was a part of those operations today. Okay, well, that was music. It sounded
Oh, it's somebody whispering.
Man, it was. Oh, but the Ukrainians are getting in there, and they're getting to work. Someone was scratching their leg right there, I think. And now they're running in.
They zoomed in all cinematic on that scratching of the leg. They zoomed in like it was like a car vid.
Man, in the middle of the epic clip with the orchestral music and everything and the epic firefight, everything paused and you just hear a Ukrainian scratching the leg. I think a mosquito bit me. And then it goes back to the epic battle again. Oh, man. But
man, I tell you, they just have a way of going back to the battle. Like, look at this. I think I had an AR with a suppressor on it, with a can.
Man, I bet you that cost him a lot of coin.
Oh, a whole lot of coin.
Oh, and then in the middle of the epic firefight, you sure you don't want to come out? Like, man, they're just asking them, you want to stop playing? I mean, we can keep playing if you want, but it's going to end badly. Man, the rest is like, I don't know. So now they're going to bring in an FPV, make things easy. There it goes, on into the window. Demolition, in short. And now they're moving on in after the drone has hit and caught the building on fire, and the first guy is gone. They're just checking some backpacks here and equipment, and then they're moving on from the general area, successfully clearing the building and moving to the next one. You can see that the Ukrainian Special Forces are pretty hands-on, and pretty quick, actually. That whole firefight in reality probably lasted less than 20 minutes from start to finish. We don't know exactly, but it looked about like that. Moving us on from those clips, showing that the Ukrainian Special Forces are still doing some numbers on the Russians down there in the southern part of Pokrovsk on the Udachny flank, we also were able to see some footage from last night of the Ukrainians firing off their FP5 Flamingos. One of these would end up hitting the Veneer Progress plant in Cheboksary. Opa.
Aye. Look at them things taking off. These are the Flamingo big ones?
These are the big ones, the FP5 Flamingo.
Yeah, those things are serious. Oh, look at that. It's like let's see this one more time before I say that. Let's see here. Yeah, it's like an initial burn phase, and then it kind of goes into cruise mode. This thing is a cruise missile, isn't it?
Well, actually, what you're seeing right there is the detachable booster. And let me go pull up a Flamingo missile so I can show this to you. So whenever they're launched, they actually have a detachable rocket that's mounted below it. It uses a solid booster. That's why it produces all of that white smoke and that humongous blast like a rocket. It's literally a small solid rocket booster. And it launches the drone up in the air. The engine's already on the cruise missile when this happens. And once the missile adjusts its altitude correctly and gets a level, steady flight, and once the propellant runs out on that solid booster, the solid booster automatically jettisons itself off of the bottom of the missile, and then the missile is on flight to its target at that point, and then cruises under its own power until it hits something.
Yeah, so the missile is powered by, I think, a large turbo fan at the top of it when the rocket's done igniting. So yeah, so that's actually pretty interesting. I didn't know that about the whole rocket assisted takeoff.
Yeah, most cruise missiles actually do use some sort of like a solid rocket assistance. From what I know, well, some of them don't. There's caveats to that, of course, but a decent amount of them, from what I've seen, generally do, especially larger ones like this. And the FPU-5 Flamingo is, of course, no exception. But a really cool missile, to say the least, in its launch, which is very powerful sounding, and also in its hit, which is also very powerful sounding. But moving us on out of that, we also got to see the Ukrainian drone attacks did hit some Russian supply trucks, including this Ural, on the highway leading into Mariupol.
Так, это у нас что?
Opa.
Урал.
Ural. He said it's a Ural, basically. That's what that meant. We also got to see that fighter bomber was tweaking out today. According to Fighter Bomber, who's a Russian military blogger, Russia is ready for effective and productive negotiations with Ukraine and is not abandoning them. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova told REI Novosti in an interview. She also added those responsible for the Ukrainian negotiations on the American side are currently fully engaged in the situation in the Middle East. Those damned Yankees, damned evil ones, are once again preventing us from making peace with those piss-stained Ukrainians. They're involved, you see. The aliens, too. This guy's lost.
The aliens.
Man, this guy
dude's
is
crazy
lost.
as hell. This dude's as crazy as Alexander Dugin over there with that crazy yapping he's doing. That dude's like snapped. Like the stuff he's posting on Twitter is insane. He's posting like stuff that's racist. This dude's posting crazy stuff over there on Twitter.
Man, like Dugin be out there talking about white people do not exist. Meanwhile, he's like literally white. It's like, is this guy like crazy or something? It's like, last I remember, Russians are whites. So, I mean, that's kind of a weird thing to say whites don't exist when he's literally a living person who's white. I was like, that's kind of odd. But anyways, moving on from that, the aliens too apparently found a more interesting and profitable military conflict somewhere near Cassiopeia. This guy's literally just coming up with shit. So they're in no hurry to fly to us and offer us their peace initiatives. The Ukrainians will definitely be held accountable for everything. So he tried to ground himself there at the end. He's about to get wearing his tinfoil hats and saying his crazy, stupid stuff as usual. But I gotta tell you, folks, this is really starting to explain that whole thing of sky is earth and everything and all that he keeps saying. This guy is mentally unhinged. He's not even here. Apparently he's following some war going on in space, which I've never heard of. And, yeah, so, anyways, moving us on out of that whole deal.
Oh, I got a little bit of breaking news, by the way. Breaking news. Currently getting a little bit of breaking news right now. This could be a big one. I'm trying to get some more confirmation on it as I speak, though. But I'll go ahead and give you all the preliminary report right now. I will say, I give the caveat, take this one with a grain of salt right now as I need more confirmation. But I'm getting some early reports that apparently a drone from Russian airspace has apparently crashed on Latvian territory, from the sounds of it. Apparently, from what I'm hearing, it might have crashed at a fuel depot in Rezekne, Latvia. Rezekne, Latvia, excuse me. I'm not sure how to say their names of their cities that well, but apparently no fire's been detected so far, and this information is very, very early. So take this with a grain of salt. I'm waiting to get more backup information about this, but it could be something possibly. So, Enforcer, what say you?
We'll have to wait for official confirmation on that, but it appears that a Russian drone has violated the NATO airspace once again, and this time may have actually caused some possible damage to a actual facility, a fuel depot at this point, but we're still waiting on confirmation on that, so take that with a grain of salt right now, folks. We don't have video or picture confirmation or an official government statement to be able to confirm that at this point, so it's very preliminary, and we're still trying to get further details on it to be able to verify if that happened. So, moving us on out of that and towards Tokmak, we also get to see that Kadyrov's boys went around today and saw that one of their radar systems was destroyed. A Costa 2E2 blade blew up in the night. Opa.
Also, by the way, let's see here. They're saying, let's see here. Hold on a second. I might have a pretty decent source here. So the report is this. This is apparently coming from a Latvian source right here. I'm trying to get the translation because, of course, it's not in English. So I'm trying to get the translation here. They're saying early on Thursday morning, several unmanned aerial vehicles entered Latvia's airspace from Russia, and 2 of them were shot down. And that's allegedly being reported by the National Armed Forces. And state police, fire, and rescue are currently on the scene. And that came out 20 minutes ago right here with this. So it looks like it actually might be a legit situation actually happening right now. I'm also seeing people say that one of the drones might have attacked an oil depot. So we might be looking at, folks, and I don't want to say this with certainty right now, as we want more corroboration on this, and also we need direct statements from the government. But this is looking like preliminarily like it could be an attack on Latvia possibly. So we'll have to see where this goes, but this could be a big lead right here.
It certainly could be, and it does sound like the Russians might have just attempted or has conducted an attack, possibly against a NATO state. So we'll have to try and see.
Check flight radar. Check flight radar 24 real quick and see if there's any military jet activity over Latvian airspace right now. See if you see any NATO aircraft moving around there, because that might be something interesting to see.
Gotcha. Not seeing anything at the moment. It's quiet up there, all quiet on the western front for the larger part.
Do you see any commercial? Is there any commercial activity in the area? Like, see if there's flights being redirected.
There's no flights in eastern Latvia, but then again, there's really no eastern flights in Estonia either, and nothing's going on there right now, so it might not indicate anything, at least from that. But a fairly interesting situation that we're hearing about. We're still trying to get confirmation on it, folks. Hopefully we can get some video or picture evidence of this to be able to try and see what we can find out a little bit further than just the reports that are coming out, because the reports are very early and appear to be preliminary. But it does appear that we are largely getting a pretty sound story going at this point. The Russians just launched a small drone incursion into Latvia, most likely an attack, because it sounds like the one drone that did make it through hit a fuel depot. We're not sure if that fuel depot is on fire at the moment, but we did get to hear that the police and fire services reported that a fuel depot had been hit, which suggests that some sort of a incident scene has been made around the impact site, which might suggest that it actually hit and damaged a fuel depot. So we're still trying to figure all that out, but once again, we're going off of a lot of ifs because the story is so early and fresh at this point. Literally just happened 20 minutes ago. But in the meantime, though, while we try and find out more about that story, we were able to confirm that there was damage to the FSB facility in Armyansk that was hit by drone forces last night, which is good to see. And without further ado, folks, it is time for us to move on up into Kyiv and cover the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1534 of the news from around the world. And so without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Шановні українці, українки, перш за все, вдячність нашим піхотинцям, усім, хто тримає позиції, де є українська піхота, є наші позиції. Багато говорять про трансформацію війни, і це правда. Більшість завдань виконують дрони і люди з дронами, але позиції держави там, де є піхота. Кожному українському піхотинцю шана за сміливість. Зараз Міністерство оборони України, військове командування працюють над тим, щоб посилити нашу піхоту. Нові контракти, нові фінансові ресурси, нові можливості саме для тих, хто на першій лінії у бойових завданнях. Я хочу подякувати усім українським піхотинцям і у День піхоти, і завжди. Друге, сьогодні була нарада щодо деяких особливих післявоєнних можливостей наших воїнів. Весь світ бачить, що український воїн справді сильний, справді досвідчений. Наш експорт безпеки після цієї війни і для ветеранів має бути реальною бізнес-можливістю. Це правильно, це справедливо, щоб наша держава могла і надалі бути глобальним суб'єктом, щоб українські воїни могли заробляти на тому безпрецедентному досвіді, який дала наша оборона. МВС України, розвідка, необхідні урядовці, команда Офісу готують законодавчу основу для того, що називається у світі військовими компаніями. Я доручив розробити для України найбільш оптимальний формат і цього року забезпечити ухвалення закону. Провідні світові держави залучають своїх громадян для роботи в так званих приватних військових компаніях і в деяких інших організаційних формах. Важливо дати нашу державну відповідь на цю нішу, на цю можливість, на цей попит в сфері експорту безпеки. І також міністр внутрішніх справ Ігор Клименко доповів сьогодні про підготовку змін до законопроекту, який буде регулювати обіг цивільної вогнепальної зброї. Багато людей вже в цій роботі, не тільки МВС, але й парламентарі, військові, правоохоронці, представники громадської сфери, представники бізнесу. Я дякую усім за небайдужість. Україні потрібен сучасний та сильний закон про цивільну вогнепальну зброю, який захистить і громадян без зброї, і врегулює реальну ситуацію для тих, хто володіє зброєю. Важливий є крок Угорщини сьогодні. Україні повернули гроші в повному обсязі та цінності, банківське золото, які були фактично викрадені за часів Орбана. Це справді чесне рішення Угорщини повернути кошти Ощадбанку. Ми цінуємо, що під впливом нової команди Угорщина робить такі кроки у напрямку добросусідства. Ми в Україні готові рухатись відповідно. Говорили сьогодні з прем'єр-міністром України Юлією Свириденко та керівником Офісу Кирилом Будановим про рішення, які треба реалізувати у внутрішній політиці, зокрема кадрові, в уряді, в державних компаніях. Найближчим часом будуть зміни на рівні заступників міністрів. Зараз готуються відповідні пропозиції. Є вакансії міністрів, вони потребують заповнення. Тривають в суспільстві дискусії щодо заміни деяких міністрів, нагально про кадрові зміни в державних компаніях. Я доручив уряду прискорити зміни в енергоатомі. Потрібен новий професійний керівник компанії. Була вже дискусія про заміну керівника такої особливої компанії, як Ліси України. Треба більше прозорості в компанії, більше доходів державному бюджету. Більш оперативними мають бути рішення і у банківській сфері. Держава контролює надто велику частину банківської сфери країни. Тут точно є можливість дати більше можливостей бізнесу. Тим більше це вже було визначено. Урядові рішення ухвалювались. Зокрема, Сенсбанк, який перейшов від російських підсанкційних власників до держави. Також Укргазбанк, який уряд запланував на приватизацію. Бажано це зробити в цьому році. Україні потрібні більш активні економічні процеси. Ще одне, найголовніше за сьогодні. Я хочу подякувати кожній державі. Хочу подякувати кожному лідеру, який підтримав Україну та пропозицію нашої держави, пропозицію, яку ми дали Росії, про встановлення повної тиші. По сьогоднішньому дню ми бачимо, що Росія відповіла на цю нашу пропозицію припинення вогню тільки новими ударами, новими атаками. Сьогодні фактично весь день, фактично щогодини з різних наших областей повідомлення про удари. Донеччина, Харківщина, Дніпровщина, Суми, область Сумська, Чернігівщина, Запоріжжя, Херсон. Жоден з видів своєї воєнної активності Росія не зупинила. На жаль, не зупинила. Україна буде діяти дзеркально, залежно від ситуації вночі та завтра. Теж будемо визначатись із нашим цілком справедливими відповідями. Росія отримала від нас чітку пропозицію щодо тиші та дипломатії і знає, як зв'язатись з Україною або з партнерами, щоб узгодити деталі. Якщо ж ту одну особу в Москві, яка не може жити без війни, цікавить тільки один парад і більше нічого, то це інша справа. Україна готова працювати заради миру. Україна прагне достойно закінчити цю війну. Росія довоювалась до того, що їхній головний парад вже залежить від нас. І цей чіткий сигнал треба завершувати. Я дякую всім, хто з нами, хто з Україною. Слава Україні!
Slava.
Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from the president of Ukraine. And we actually have a continued breaking news story coming out of Rezekne Latvia at this moment to be able to cover to all of y'all. Matthew, would you mind if I cover this one, because I've been working hard to get these posts.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right,
I mean,
so-
you cover everything though. I'm going. Let me cover it though. You cover
Oh,
everything.
man,
let me cover a
Oh
story
man,
here.
but I found the good post. But go ahead.
So we do have some breaking news here. So apparently it's confirmed. Apparently at least 2 drones apparently impacted on Latvian territory, and apparently more than just 2 drones entered the airspace of Latvia. So this is a very big deal, by the way. It looks like it hit an oil storage depot. At least one of these drones hit an oil site inside of Latvia. So of course it is in the border regions. I do want to make that clear. It's not hitting like a population center inside of Latvia, like for example the capital or anything like that, but it is a pretty big deal. We are seeing as well that apparently these images we're looking at right here is the emergency responders showing up on the scene inside of Latvia at the site of the oil depot to get the situation under control. So this sounds like it could be more than simply an accident to me. It looks like people are kind of painting it to be possibly an accident and maybe deliberate. This looks deliberate to me. This doesn't look like an accident. And also keep in mind that Russia's been spreading around this narrative that the states here, these Latvia, Estonia, etc., is letting Ukraine use their airspace to launch attacks on Russia. So, I mean, that's a pretty big problem right there. So, Enforcer, what say you?
So to cover a little bit of the story that I was able to find from what we were able to see, we did get an official announcement from the Armed Forces of Latvia's Twitter account here about 1.5 hours ago at this point, which stated the following. Several unmanned aerial vehicles have entered Latvia's airspace. Currently, 2 unmanned aerial vehicles that have crashed on Latvian territory have been detected. The Air Force has identified the entry of foreign unmanned aerial vehicles into Latvia's airspace from Russia. 2 unmanned aerial vehicles have crashed on Latvian territory. Units from the National Armed Forces, State Police, State Fire, and Rescue Services are at the scene. For residents' attention, seek shelter indoors, close windows and doors. If you notice a low-flying, suspicious, or dangerous object, do not approach it and call 112 for emergency services. We will inform you that when the threat has ended. We then also heard that according to the Latvian police, they issued the following statement. Today, on May 7th at around 3:30, the state police received a call to an oil storage facility on the Komunala Street in Resigne, where smoke was visible. Initial information indicates that a drone may have crashed at the scene. The services are clarifying the circumstances of the incident. Emergency services are working at the scene. The State Fire and Rescue Service carried out extinguishing operations, and the state police have cordoned off the affected area. We urge residents not to approach the scene. We then were able to see that pictures were... Go ahead.
20, it apparently, well, according to what you're saying, what I'm reading here, apparently 25 miles into Latvian airspace, that one of these drones, that's a confirmed impact, it went 25 miles into Latvia, and the other one, they're not saying what happened to the other one. It apparently impacted somewhere inside of Latvia, and they're suggesting there was more than that. So it was probably very likely more than just 2 drones. And also, by the way, was there even an attack taking place on Ukraine? I mean, this isn't even near Ukraine to do that, is it? Like, look at the map real quick, just for reference. Like, take a look at that.
So Resigne, the town, just to show y'all here, is at the closest point of the Ukrainian border, about 344 miles away from Ukraine, which is about, if I'm not mistaken, the entire length that Ukraine is from north to south across its mainland, which... yeah, that's about it. So it's a whole Ukraine away from Ukraine, the town of Resigne is, but it is only 25 miles away from the Russian border, directly heading to the east. So these drones were launched from inside of Russia, most likely with the intent of flying into Latvia and going nowhere near to Ukraine. Also, on top of that, another thing that's interesting to note is that there, according to the Latvian police, was some smoke coming from the scene. And that would appear to suggest that the drone had caught on fire after it had hit, but we're not really sure at the moment, because we haven't gotten pictures of the actual incident scene yet from anyone in the public, whether or not the depot itself caught on fire or not. Here in a minute, we're going to try and geolocate this exact facility in Resigne, because we have the street name, but when I tried to put it into Google, nothing came back, so we'll have to physically look for it to be able to try and find the location of the incident in Resigne. But these are our first pictures that we can see from the incident, which appear to be showing that the Latvian Fire Department and the Latvian Police had arrived, although in these 2 pictures we're not seeing any elements of the Latvian National Militia or the Latvian Army, which have shown up at the moment. We were then able to also hear that earlier in the day, air raid warnings had actually been given in the area of Resigne, well, actually in the Balvi and Lusta municipalities, which includes the town of Resigne. Well, actually, it's very close to including the town of Resigne, but the town of Resigne is right where my mouse cursor is, which is in the Resigne municipality area. area, not in the Baldi or Ludza municipality. So it did appear that this was an ongoing incident earlier on that we did not catch because we were live on air by the time this happened, and the drones actually went well past these municipalities and on to Resigne. We've also been able to confirm that at this point, according to this individual here on Twitter, which it seems by what they're saying, they're actually in Resigne. This is what they had to say. So we're taking this as an eyewitness report at the moment, and we're going to report this as factual news for now. Last time, the Twitter geniuses here were saying that the border residents are whiners, understand nothing, and the Latvian army is protecting us. Today, we received some too, along with 2 explosions in the city in Resigne. Now the police are driving around and something is hovering over the city. So if we're taking this as an eyewitness report, apparently they're suggesting that 2 drones actually impacted somewhere within the city. We know of the one at the fuel depot, and maybe the second one crashed somewhere nearby in a farm field or close enough to the city that a report of an explosion was also heard there. And apparently there must have been some other drone that they're stating was in the air and still flying over the city at that point in time when they made this tweet.
Yeah, I'll be honest. It's really hard to like find an alternative explanation other than this being an attack. I know that's a bit of a jump to make this early on, but with it being removed from Ukraine, I mean, Ukraine is the war zone. So if Russia's going to launch drones into a country, it's going to be into Ukraine, and that's nowhere near Latvia. That's way down below. Obviously, Ukraine's nowhere near Latvia. There's a separation with Belarus, etc. So it seems to me like they probably did this intentionally. In fact, I'm not sure how we can explain this away otherwise. So essentially, Russia has just launched an attack on NATO. Essentially, that's what I'm getting out of this.
Let's take a look at something here really quickly, because I can't find a street by the one that's been named, this Communala Street in Resigne. But this appears to be a roundabout here, and this appears to be the only roundabout I can find in town. Now, we're going to keep that one in mind. Keep that one in mind, Matthew, just right south of the railway station, because we're going to come back to that in a minute. But wherever the incident scene is at, it's near to a roundabout. Here it is. The Communatal Street. Is there a fuel depot on that street? Doesn't look like it. Those mostly residential. So it looks like the incident scene, best we can tell right now, is somewhere around the central rail yard in the town of Resigne, because it looks like the incident scene was near to here, near this roundabout. But I don't think the buildings are matching up. It looks to be a 2-story building, and these buildings appear to be multi-story, most likely 3 to 4. But let me check that. Yeah, these are a lot larger, and also this roundabout doesn't match. So let's see. Matthew, can you try and see if you can find that street? Because I put it in letter for letter right here into Google, and I didn't get anything at all for the name of the street in any place in the world, much less Resigne. Maybe we can try and find it some way, because it's got to be somewhere most likely in the middle of the city.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a geolocation on it right now to see if I can get that exact location. So give me just a second here, and I'm able to get something for you.
All right, and so hopefully we'll be able to find something, or Enforcer Matt will be able to grab us something on the side, because I'm still trying to look around, folks, and I'm just sadly not finding the street name in this town or a roundabout to match the pictures that we have from the incident scene that the fire department and the police have shown up to. There is a big electrical substation over here to the west, main lines heading in from the south going north into the city. Not really a lot of roundabouts.
Right. So I'm going to paste this into the chat. Just copy and paste that into Google, and that should bring you to it.
All right. So let's see here. Let me try and grab that here. There we go. And then let me copy that, paste it into here. Oh, it's right here. So this is the fuel depot. So it is very close to the central area.
So also, by the way, folks, what are the odds that Russian drones enter the airspace of a NATO country right on their border, and it's nowhere near Ukraine, and it hits an oil storage site? What are the odds of something like that?
Very slim, next to none. There's the oil facility in there. Let's see here. Let me see if I can get us a better view inside there. Let's see here. Trying to make our way around. There it is. This is the oil depot, or the fuel depot. that appears to have been targeted by this Russian drone. So there was smoke coming from the facility. We don't know if this means that there's been some sort of a rupture or an ongoing fire at the depot. They don't seem to be clear on that. We're not getting a lot of footage at the moment, however, of any fires that have broken out in Resigne, which seems to be giving us an indication there may not be a huge fire that's broken out. It may have just been a smoldering fire from the debris of the drone that hit this facility. But it is certainly odd, wildly odd, folks, that after that one drone hit the Romanian city of Galati a couple of days ago, now a second one has hit a fuel depot, which would be a strategic target to hit in Resigne, which is a significant border town in this area. And not only that, if I'm not mistaken, Resigne is home to the 3rd Brigade of the National Guard of the Latvian Armed Forces. So not only, well, technically it's the staging area for them, but not only is this town seeing that a strategic target would have been hit, but it's also the basing area for the 3rd Brigade of the Latvian militia. So this is a quite concerning development, to say the least, and I think if the drone was not armed, then it was most likely an attempt to see how easy it would be for a Russian drone to penetrate Latvian airspace and start hitting strategic targets in the first off attack. But we actually have breaking news even coming out at this moment. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so apparently there are still active warnings inside of Latvia. It sounds like there's still active airspace warnings in Ludza, Balvi, and also Resnike, or however you pronounce it, the one that got hit. So they're saying that there's still warnings going on. Also, by the way, sadly, I don't think we're able to show the video, but we can show a still shot of it. There appears to be a video showing the drone coming in. I just reposted it right now. We can show a still. You could hear it there for a brief second. We cannot show the video though. But yeah, there's the drone right there coming in. It's just flying straight into the airspace. That's apparently it right there.
And it looks to be under control. I mean, it's traveling at a level altitude at a consistent speed through the city. It looks like it did. It looks like this one actually passed over the oil depot, because that's the oil depot right there below. And this thing is actually flying over it and past it. So this might be the eyewitness reported drone that was hovering over the city in the air. That might be the one, actually.
Yeah, and also, by the way, just to emphasize this is apparently an active situation. It's not over from the sounds of it. So I'm not sure if they're expecting more drones to enter Latvian airspace, but they're maybe out of an abundance of caution, they're keeping the airspace warnings in place. But apparently, though, they believe there's still an imminent threat from the sounds of it. So we could be looking at a very serious situation here. This could get very serious if we hear more reports of more drones entering in the next hour or so.
It certainly could. This is a very concerning situation, because this one drone that we have confirmed that impacted the fuel depot has beelined and targeted a strategic location in Latvia. Fuel depots are always under the category of a strategic position or location, or an asset. We are now seeing that another drone was flying over the area, and apparently a third drone crashed somewhere outside the city nearby. This is a pretty concerning development right here, and it looks like this may be an attempt by the Russians, once again, to see how far they can push the envelope without it being a complete overt attack, but getting very close to conducting a full-on overt attack on NATO forces and NATO states with drone forces. Or this might be the very beginning of it right here. We're not entirely sure at the moment, but this is a very concerning situation, to say the least.
Yeah, I would say so. So at this point, if it stays limited to what it is right now, I would still say it's safe to call it an attack, I would say. But if there's more drones that show up, though, that will solidify it. It's definitely an attack with a 100% certainty if more drones show up. So we'll be waiting on pins and needles to see if these drones show up. The fact that these airspace warnings are still in place suggests that it could be not over yet. So that's very interesting. I was not expecting this to happen like this tonight. And also, by the way, I'll be honest, folks, I was expecting Estonia to be the first one to possibly get hit if there was going to be any attacks on these states up here in the Baltics. But it looks like Latvia might be the first. I'm not sure why Latvia was chosen, but it seems like they might be the first possible if this is confirmed to be intentional and also an attack.
Also, another thing to point out, folks, is that this drone didn't only just land on the fuel depot, it landed on the side of the city that is zoned for industrial activity. There's no major industries, from what we can tell, throughout most of the southern side of Resigne, but north of the railroad tracks, you can see that this entire area is an industrial zone. So not only did they attack a fuel depot, the drone landed it is quite deliberately at this point, within the industrial area of the city, which would be something that a drone attack would attempt to target and hit and damage, because that would be what you would want to hit in the midst of an ongoing war.
Yeah, I would say so. I don't like to make big leaps of faith because it's kind of risky to make big leaps of faith like this. When the information is kind of slim, but it's hard under the circumstances not to jump the gun and say that this is a blatant attack on NATO. It's kind of hard to say that at the moment because there's really no good alternative explanations for why this has happened, especially also hitting an oil storage depot. I can understand, for example, we see attacks, or not necessarily attacks, but we see stray Russian drones going to Romania pretty much all the time. That happens very often. They'll target the border section of Ukraine, and occasionally a Russian drone goes errant and it goes into Romania, but it usually crashes into an empty field where there's nothing there. This one didn't crash in an empty field. This one went straight for an oil depot. And also on top of that, there's more apparently in their airspace that was coming in. One of the other ones hit somewhere else, and apparently they don't know where the other ones went. How many ever were in there? So this is crazy. I'm not even really sure what to say about it.
Well, it's very concerning. It's teetering on the very edge of an outbreak of war if this was responded to accordingly. But we'll have to see how NATO responds to it, and we'll also have to try and make sure to keep you all apprised of this story as it is unfolding on air, and also most likely after we go off air by just continuously updating our Twitter with the most recent news that we can get on this as it continues to happen. So, we'll have to see what goes on here, but with that in mind, folks, we do have to make sure to keep up a schedule to a little bit of a degree, so we'll have to start getting into some questions here. And of course, by the way, folks, I do have to say, it's union requirement. We have entered the question segment at this moment. We are going to be answering mostly questions. There may be some breaking news that we give as updates here and there throughout the question segment, but do not expect us to be covering nothing but news from this point on. It's mostly going to be questions, again, to talk to the audience. So with that in mind, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat here, this one goes to Cygnus RF, who put in a $100 support, and thank you for that support. They said, I don't understand how you only have good news about Ukraine, Middle East allies, etc., but 90% of your U.S. information is shitty. What say you? No shallow response.
I have to say, first off, it's pretty goofy to say no shallow response and then you call us the endorser, kind of showing a bit of shallowness on your end. But to answer your question, as far as the reason why everything is going good in Ukraine and everything's not going well in Iran is because might be hard to comprehend. They're two separate wars and they're going a lot differently right now. Ukraine is on the upper hand in their war and they're generally winning the conflict, and also it's a long-term war, so generally they can fight a war of attrition and it makes sense. On the other hand, the United States is fighting a short-term war that will have devastating results with how it's going right now, and because of that, it's going a lot differently and it's not going well for us. I think you're having a bit of a misunderstanding here, that just because a war is happening in the world that's good doesn't mean that every single one of them is turning out well. I don't know if you understand this, but the Franco-Prussian War went well for the Germans in that war, and then World War II went pretty badly for the Germans. And just because they're Germany didn't mean that all of them went great and it was successful. So I think you're kind of getting a little bit confused here about the dynamics of the world, and that every war that's happening in the world doesn't have to be going great, or it doesn't have to all be going poorly. Each war is measured by its own merits, and either a war is going well based off of how it's fought, or it's not. Right now, Ukraine is doing well. To explain the parameters of why everything they're doing is pretty good right now is because they're fighting a war of attrition. It's a gridlock on the front lines, which benefits Ukraine because Russia's in the position where they have to advance deeper into Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't have to push Russia out. They just have to try and stop them from pushing deeper. The Ukrainians are also conducting long-range drone attacks on the Russian Federation to weaken their economy and make it financially infeasible for Russia to continue the war, which also achieves their war objective of eventually pushing the Russians out, which makes that a very viable strategy for them, and that's why they're winning. On the other hand, the United States of America entered the Iran war with the idea that blowing up an old dude with a long white beard would end the war in in 3 days. The war didn't end in 3 days. The U.S. military leadership and the president did not even address the issue of a possible blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, allowing for the Iranians to lay significant minefields and exert direct military force over the entirety of the strait, now creating an effective blockade, which is now chokeholding global oil stockpiles and also oil reserves, and is also causing great instability within global oil markets, which could lead to a significant economic recession within the Western sphere of influence and over the entirety of the world as a result of a failing of war planning at the very onset of the conflict. That's why the Iran war is not reported positively, and that's why the war in Ukraine is reported positively. They're two different wars with two different strategies, different types of tactics that are resulting in different outcomes, because the world is a dynamic place. So I hope that answers your question, but I would have to say that if you're expecting this channel to ever be beholden to your personal opinion of you just like the president or whatnot, and you want the war in Iran to be, you want me to lie to you and tell you that the war in Iran is going well when it's clearly not by any measure, that's going to be a little bit of a hard sell for us. You could throw in $100 of support like you did. You could throw in $500 of support. We're not ever going to change or affect the integrity of our news reporting because of public pressure like yours or any amount of support. The news is the news, and we're here to report it the best we can. So I thank you so much for the support and help this channel to keep it running, and I hope that you respect the answer that I gave, because it is the most accurate and most adept answer that I could give, and I would hope that you would stay around. If you don't stay around, however, that's rather unfortunate, and I hope that you can find a channel that more so is tailored to your tastes of listening to what you would like to hear instead of what's actually happening. But with that, we're on to the next one.
What a terrible thing. So horrible. This is horrible. That's what they call it. Horrible. Well, you just don't know what you're talking about, do you? You just don't know what you're talking about. But anyways, though, moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to Nick Hines. And thank you very much, Nick, for that $50 support. We do appreciate that very, very much. And Nick said, you guys are amazing. And thank you for that, by the way. He said, if the U.S. was friendly to Ukraine, do you think America would be way ahead in anti-drone technology?
Sadly, I don't think so, actually, because like it would definitely allow for us to do it a lot more quickly, but I don't really think we'd be ahead, because back in the prior administration, we were actually a lot closer to the Ukrainians, at least in terms of foreign policy, than we are now. And even with that closeness, we hardly took advantage of that friendship that we had with them and open, cooperation to be able to implement any form of advancement in drone warfare here in the United States. In fact, we were almost completely idle on it. The reality of it is that no matter the position that the current administration would be in right now, we would still be about at square one with drone warfare, much like we are in the present day, unfortunately, because nobody's really considered in America to be a significant deal or a major threat that drone warfare has completely changed how wars are fought. So sadly, I'd actually have to say on that one, the situation would largely be unchanged to what it is now. It'd probably be a lot easier and a lot quicker to implement drone defensive and offensive measures in our armed forces if we were really friendly with Ukraine right now, but we would still largely be starting from square one. So a big thanks to you so much for that incredible support, by the way, Nick, and also thank you for the kind words and helping this channel to keep it running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, we wouldn't be able to keep it running, and we wouldn't be able to keep covering this news day in and day out. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have here a support from none other than Give Up Now. And thank you very much, Give Up Now, for that $50 support. I do not see a comment attached to it, though. I don't see it. I was double checking here, though, to make sure. But I don't think there is one. But thank you very much once again for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say a big thanks to you for support, Give Up Now, because while you didn't throw in a comment, your support is greatly appreciated, and we thank you so much for helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, this thing wouldn't be possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 support from Chad Shepard. And thank you, Chad, as well, for that support. And Chad said, my opinion is the UAE is mad about the way that we haven't refilled their defenses. So they said, you're not landing here. We are done.
I would guess that that's probably what probably more so what Saudi Arabia said, maybe, because that's starting to be a pretty concrete story that's coming out at this point, is that it does look like the Saudi Arabians have just denied a use of airspace in Saudi Arabia to the United States. I think that it really is that they're just getting tired of not being coordinated with or communicated with, because we're using their soil and airspace, which has opened them up to attacks from Iran, to be able to conduct our military operations against them, and yet we don't even give them the common courtesy, considering that they are able to come under direct attack and they have been attacked by the Iranians, to tell them what's going on and what our next plan is and maybe run it by them at some point. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Marion Deemert. And thank you very much, Marion, for that $30 support. And we do appreciate that. And Marion said, oh man, I don't know if I can read this one right here. I hate it. I can't read it. If I read it off, people are going to say we're political for show. So I think I'll have to pass, Marion. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say a big thanks to you for support, Marion Deemert. And sadly, we couldn't touch that one with a 10-foot barge pole. The cease and desists would be coming like a flowing waterfall. So I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running, but sadly we just wouldn't be able to touch that one. But a huge thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $25 support from Benjamin Barak, and thank you very much, Benjamin, for that 25. He said, would taking out Iran's missile launching capabilities that are near the Strait of Hormuz be enough to make the passage safe? And or could Iran still make it unsafe by launching missiles from further inland?
I would have to say, let's see, would taking out off there need to be. Well, generally, I had to make sure to reread that one to make sure that I was understanding it correctly. Generally, the issue is that the near direct threats on the shore are the biggest threats, because while missile threats can exist further inland, it allows for us to have a larger response window. No matter what, even with the air scenarios that I talk about on air, preliminary clearing operations done in significant airstrikes, there will always be an existent and permeable threat by the Islamic Republic of Iran within the Strait of Hormuz by their anti-ship forces to some measure. However, we would be one, be able to greatly mitigate that threat and make it far more manageable for our warships to deal with them as they make their passages in convoy escorts, and two, by destroying most of the near littoral threats on the shoreline of the Strait of Hormuz, we are buying a larger response window. Most anti-ship missiles and also drones travel at less than 100 miles an hour for the larger part. That's the rule of thumb these days. And anti-ship missiles travel at subsonic speeds of about 650 to 700 miles an hour. If they fire those from 100 miles inland, that is giving such a large response window to our warships in the strait that they are able to deal with those threats and shoot them down safely and effectively while they're out at the farthest air defense perimeter of the ship, instead of them being launched from basically within the very inner range of the second layer of air defense or the final layer of air defense for those warships. That's generally the kind of air operations that I'm talking about that would make the strait passable. It would never be completely inert where there's nothing being fired at anybody. There would almost always be something being fired at someone, but either it'd be far less in volume over a period of time, or it would be a lot more manageable, one or the other. But I hope that does address it the best I can, Benjamin. Great question, by the way, and a huge thanks to you for the support. And in the midst of this, we actually have another bit of breaking news coming out. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have just gotten word that not only has Saudi Arabia allegedly cut off the airspace access to the United States, but it sounds like Kuwait might have just done so as well. So apparently, if you believe the reports right now, it sounds like both Kuwait and Saudi Arabia have told the U.S. no to using their airspace for the Project Freedom in the Strait of Hormuz, which is now a defunct project because they put that whole thing on ice for the most part. So we're waiting on more at this point, folks. I'm saying we're waiting on more information. It sounds like this is pretty credible at this point, but of course we'll wait for more confirmation. But it sounds pretty credible, so that's not a good sign. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that it certainly isn't a good sign, and it looks like if these reports are correct, it looks like we just pissed everybody off in the Middle East by announcing Project Freedom, and now we might have jeopardized our ability to conduct any military operations at this point, because now everybody might be pulling out the blanket or the carpet right out from under us and denying us to even use their bases and facilities within their countries to continue military operations. Well, one hell of a deal maker. You gotta say, never seen anything like this. Literally have never seen anything like this one before. That's something. I don't even know how the hell we could manage pissing him off that badly, but there you have it, folks. I mean, the damn greatest negotiator on the planet just negotiated us out of base usage rights, apparently, in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia at the drop of a hat. So there you have it, folks. We'll try and figure out some more information on that one. We'll probably have more for a short war video tomorrow, probably, or the stream tomorrow. But this is starting to pan out to sound like an absolutely horrific story that's unfolding at this point. So with that, I hope we've addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a super chat from Music Uploader, and thank you very much for the support as well. They said Saudis and Pakistanis are issuing American foreign policy now. Someone speed dial Bolton now. LOC.
I have a long-term blockade and I need help now. Call J.G. Bolton, 877-WAR now. But beyond that, oh, turn up! Like, man, turn up! But beyond that, I gotta say, honestly, I think we need a guy like Bolton. Bolton would sort this whole thing out easy peasy. But big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Or we could have Pompeo for, Secretary of Defense. That wouldn't be a bad idea either. Pretty level-headed guy, very reasonable, comes up with pretty decent approaches, understands what he's talking about. Pompeo isn't a bad option. Maybe have Pompeo for the Secretary of Defense and Bolton as an advisor. That'd probably put us on a pretty good footing at some point. But, we'll have to see if they ever do that. Because we're only these lowly YouTubers, just citizens of the Republic, common peasants like all of y'all. We don't have a say in this. We don't have a say. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have here a super chat from C146 who put in a 20. And thank you very much, C146, for that support. They said, very sneaky to go live at 10 EST when I'm just getting into a buzz of some sort of after work. Only creators I've ever waited to go live for, given money to, for that fact. In crazy times these days, and nice to have objective and trustworthy summary.
Thank you so much for the support, C146, and we try our best to have a good, decent, succinct sort of a summary on this channel, one that's well-informed and well-researched, and I hope that we met that qualification. And of course, I create your comfort of many people out there. A lot of people have made this into their normal nightly routine, and we're always happy to hear it. We love to know that people are always joining us every night for this news. I think we have one of the more consistent audiences out there because we are as consistent as can be, literally running nightly. And so if anybody wants to have any afternoon news and a little bit of some jokes, they can always come here, just like you. And a big thanks to you for the support, C146, and helping this channel to keep on running, so that way we can make this thing possible for many a years to come. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have another one from Music Uploader who put in another 20, and I'll read it in the proper voice. He said, Sir, I disagree, sir. There's no such thing as disagree. It's a disagreement. They call it a disagreement. I don't like those. Based on a 69-dimensional telescope, if you take the radius of Earth and divide it by the sum of 4, ceasefire violations, that is, violations, ceasefire, brand new term, you'll see that Iran has broken the ceasefire 0 times. That's because we're always right. 0 times is how many times they've violated it. That's what they say, sir. Sir. Enforcer, what say you?
Many people have been saying to me about this whole war thing, Mr. President, you've really screwed it up. And to those people I say, fake news. We've only screwed it up in every way that counts. In the ways that don't count, we haven't screwed it up. We blew up some old man in Tehran. I mean, that was kind of cool, right? It really didn't change anything, but it was kind of neat. We blew up the biggest bridge in Iran. That was pretty cool, right? All of the boats were blown up. Really, they were more so ships. The Iranians wouldn't have used them anyways, but we blew them up. We didn't blow up the little boats, though, that they used. So, I mean, honestly, who's counting, though? Who's counting? Not me. I threatened to blow up their power plants and bridges about 6 times and backed off of that each and every time. And I put about 90 deadlines out there, and none of those have been followed through on. And now we have openly challenged Iran on the Strait of Hormuz, and then everybody pulled the rug out from under us, and now we can't actually do that, so we had to cancel that. So honestly, it's not going too badly. I mean, at least we can still run our mouths. That's something. We can just kind of choke on reality and kind of lie about the whole thing.
A choke artist, that's what he is. He's literally choking right now. "Do you not have your brains? Do you not have the brains you were born with?" They said, "Sir, the brains. You gotta have those. It's multiple brains. It's not like the cells in the brain. You can't worry about the cells." I said, sir, sleeper cells. No, they're not sleeping. They're all awake. I'm totally woke. That's what they say, sir. All the cells are woke. That's because we're always wide awake, wide open eyes. You gotta keep an eye on the situation, sir.
Remember, everyone, when I started off my political career back in the day, and I said, I'm not an establishment, now I'm establishing a whole new norm of how we do things, which is called effing shit up the fastest way. It's a wonderful system, and we just say that everything's going great in the meantime. You know, gas is $5 a gallon. We just tell everybody that they're wrong. It's actually $3 still. It's a great, wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. You know, sometimes we bring up washed-up actors to come up on stage and say how well everything's going, like they'd know. They run a reality TV show that talks about buying stuff at a pawn shop. What would a pawn store owner know about war? I honestly don't know. It's a great mystery to me. Great mystery, but honestly, the fake news wouldn't know either because they're a little bit up their own ass, being a big frat in the sorority and all, coming up with bullshit. But anyways, I do thank you greatly for the support. Greatly, hugely, actually. Some of the greatest, because if it wasn't for your support, this whole channel wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be able to be here every night, yapping our heads off. It's for many people. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one goes to Frosty Rotor X, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Frosty Rotor, for that support. They said, I bought a Tesla in November of last year, feeling very happy with my decision right about now.
Oh, well, I got to break the bad news to y'all. Hold up, folks. I got to go get it. Most of the energy in the United States is produced by petroleum. Over a third of it, actually, and also natural gas, which natural gas and petroleum are some of the more heavily affected sorts of categories right now in the international supply chain. So about around 70% of our energy production relies on oil and natural gas to run. So sadly, that's going to be going up as well. Not as much as gas directly from the pump, but it still will be going up. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news for you, but not even a Tesla is saving you from what's coming. Like the power bill is just going to go up in general for everybody, but hopefully it won't be too bad. Hopefully it'll be manageable. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that is addressed out well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Marion Deemer once again, who puts in a 20 and said, who else is tired of paying taxes, in their words? By the way, some people pay no taxes. Taxes are a thing. Every country taxes. There is such a thing as overtaxing, though. Like there gets to a point where there's too many taxes, like, sales tax, property tax, taxes on pretty much everything these days, income tax. I mean, everything seems like it's taxed. I mean, even when you go get your tag at the city place, you got to pay a tax on that too. Like you got to get taxed on everything. Yeah, I mean, you get a capital gain, you getting taxed, some tax here, tax there. It's very taxing. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to say, folks, I honestly don't like paying taxes, but it is a civic duty. We must pay taxes to upkeep the nation. The founding fathers found that one out after they did the whole thing of the Revolutionary War, and they wrote up the Articles of Confederation, and they said, okay, everybody, the federal government doesn't need to raise taxes. And then they found out that it's literally impossible to do anything without money. And then they went to the Constitutional Convention and went, okay, everybody, now we're going to write it in as a power of the federal Congress that they can raise taxes because we need the money. And so, unfortunately, while nobody likes paying taxes, it is a necessity of the upkeep of the state that all citizens do pay taxes. So while it is something I don't take great joy in, I do take pride in the fact that we do upkeep our nation, hopefully, through paying taxes. But I do thank you incredibly for the support and help this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that quite well indeed, as a matter of fact. And also, I saw someone bring up in the chat just a little bit earlier, someone said, clown world. Well, it's a bit of a tragedy, folks, because everyone, like, and I gotta say that super chat about the whole Tesla thing, it's like, oh, that's good. But then when you really look at it, it's like, not even that's going to save you, because literally everything runs on oil these days, oil or natural gas or something along those lines. And so that means that everybody's going to be affected in every way. It's not even going to just be the price at the pump. I don't think right now, folks, not even Matthew and me can comprehend the firestorm that is to come from what is happening right now. Like, we're trying to say it on air, but I don't even think that even with our predictions right now and what we're thinking it's going to look like, we can even get an idea of what that's actually going to look like economically, because it's been unseen before. We've never seen such a huge disruption in oil shipments around the world and oil supply. Not even the crisis of the 70s were this bad in the percentage of oil that had knocked out of the market. And this just keeps going, and we just don't know what this is going to lead to, but it's going to start getting a little rough. So, you know, it's a tough one, to say the least, and unfortunately, everybody's going to be affected to a good degree if this continues. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ben20. And thank you very much, Ben20, for that $20 support. He said, time to let the U.S. military professionals to take over military strategy in the Middle East, and they are more than capable. Obviously, the government's clueless, but at least Spring Army rules.
And the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And I got to say that I would agree. We should always be generally giving most of the reins to the generals. That's why we go through all the effort of having them and having them appointed or more so approved for their promotions by the Congress and whatnot. We go through a huge amount of effort to vet our generals to make sure that they are the best. They have to be vetted by the Senate and approved by the Senate. They have to be promoted by the president. And they sit around for decades just working on stuff like this, on the larger picture of it all. And for some reason here, we've decided that they're not smart enough. They've only been in the military their whole lives for decades now, but apparently they're not smart enough. Apparently we need the president, who has never served in the military a day, to be able to make all of the decisions, along with the Secretary of Defense, who was only in the military for a couple of years and did not make it to the level of the rank of general. We need those people to make the decisions, because clearly they would know more than the people who are career professionals that have been doing it for decades. Little backwards to me, a little topsy-turvy, but, you know, who am I to judge? I mean, the decisions have been sound. Sound as far as making the worst decisions possible out of all of our options, but still sound, at least in that depth. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does dressed out well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Adam McLean, and thank you, Adam, as well. He said Putin's days are really getting tough.
Yeah, they definitely are. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from the Becca Fly, and thank you very much to Becca Fly for that support. Oh boy. Now, I want to explain this because I don't want to just keep saying I'm skipping over stuff without giving a proper explanation for this. We have to watch our ass a little bit because, you know, talking about the folks that are in power, like, while we do believe in speaking truth to power, like we believe in that, and we've done that from time to time, and actually we do that every single night these days, we don't want to say anything that could put us in legal jeopardy, possibly. And this one right here, I would say, kind of borders on that, possibly. Some of it might be true, possibly, but sadly, I don't want to read it off for legal reasons. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to unfortunately agree, and I do thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running, but I hope that everyone does understand that in these days, people have gotten fairly litigious, especially on anything that they believe is defamatory to their image. And so if you do not have absolutely verifiable proof about someone on something of that nature, where it's a claim of a personal act that may be possibly criminal, or maybe attempting to damage their reputation, they can bring suit against us for defamation, slander, libel, and anything amidst that, whether it be written, spoken, or whatnot. And the problem with that is, folks, is that for public figures, it's very hard for them to prove that they are being defamed. The problem is, however, is that to get to that point to where the case makes it there, to where a judge says they're a public figure and they really can't be hurt by this or these claims, we have been taken out to the cleaners and we are broke by the point that a judge would make that decision. So we have to be very careful about what we say and what we repeat and what we talk about, like things like that, because some people might be listening and we don't know who, and they might just decide to try and bankrupt us, and then that would bring the end of the show as a result, unfortunately. So we have to be very careful careful of what we say. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. But I hope you also understand, unfortunately, why we have to be a little bit careful of what we say these days. But a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 20 from Right Geek Project, and thank you very much, Right Geek, for that $20 support. They said, it's just hard to comprehend. CIA and Mossad and mighty military forces, we are stuck on a narrow strait for so long. Either this is the most brainless execution of the operation or deliberate intent and delay to cause global energy crisis.
And I'd have to say, a big thanks to your support, Right Geek Project, and I'd also have to say that it is quite confusing. I would honestly say that it has to be some sort of incompetence or such an egregious failure at the very beginning of the war that it's becoming either they're scared to try and fix it because they know that significant losses will be incurred if that's attempted. Honestly, folks, it's a lose-lose for them. I don't know if they realize that at this point. I think they're still trying to live in a delusion that it's not. They're either going to have to fix the situation, which is going to result in a lot of U.S. soldiers losing their lives and a lot of wounded being created as a result of the attempt to reopen the strait, or the economy is going to collapse. Either way, it's going to end up so badly for them that the reality of it is that they're probably going to be looking at a pretty bad upcoming midterm. That's what they're concerned about right now. That's probably why they're getting all hamstrung on doing anything, because they know that trying to clear the strait is going to result in significant losses of personnel and equipment, most likely. If they don't open the strait, it's going to end up in an economic recession or a depression. Either one's going to be bad enough that it's not going to bode well in an upcoming election. And I think that's what's hamstringing them at the moment, is that they've realized they've made a dire mistake, and now to correct prior mistakes, they now must take drastic actions in one form or another, or accept drastic results from a lack of inaction, and that's what's stopping them where they are right now, I think. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $13 support from Winston Smith. And Winston said, this Iran-Schrodinger's war is very frustrating, and the USA has the most powerful forces in human history, but is so held back, and Iran is more dangerous than ever, and we need to take it more seriously.
I would certainly agree. I wish that we would take it more seriously, and I wish that we would actually fight the war in a proper way that would lead to a good conclusion. But a big thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Music Uploader, and thank you very much, Music Uploader, as well. They said, I know the chat rules, but it's curious how this world is unfolding like a movie from the Book of Revelation.
And I thank you for the support, but if I remember the Book of Revelation properly, I think that someone was supposed to be able to perform miracles. I haven't been seeing any miracles, so, I mean, kind of, but not really, like, at least to me. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Eastside Barbell, who put in a 10. They said, what was Storm and Norman doing in this conflict?
Oh, Storm and Norman. He's sorely missed by me. He was the greatest general that we had in the modern day. Really, I mean, he was a visionary in many ways, but sadly he is passed. He's been gone. He's been dead for 15 years at this point. Quite a long time, actually. I don't know what he would do in this sort of a situation, because I don't know how Schwarzkopf, and I would have been very interested to see if he had lived long enough to be able to talk about this, how he would have dealt with drone warfare, or how quickly he would have implemented that into his doctrines, because he was very forward thinking when it came to just about everything on grand strategy. I'm sure he would have thought of that and factored that in. He probably would have been a huge proponent of supporting Ukraine and also building up significant relations between the U.S. and Ukraine to be able to implement Ukrainian drone doctrine in the U.S. forces and possibly Ukrainian drone technologies as well to get the jump as quickly as possible on that. But sadly, he's not here. But I have a feeling that he would have probably handled this incredibly well. I mean, what's crazy, folks? A lot of people don't know this, but both the, Schwarzkopf was such a popular guy and was such a level-headed guy and a reasonable guy, and nobody really ever hears about this a lot about him, that he was actually approached by the Republicans and the Democrats, and both of them asked this guy, begged them, literally, to run for president under either party, and he'd basically be a shoo-in because he was that popular and he was that charismatic and that intelligent that people would just know that the guy's got talent and the guy is set for a good position as president. He would have been a modern Eisenhower, but the guy was humble enough that he kept shooting down the offers each and every time and just said that he wanted to live his life in peace down in Tampa, I believe, and just live out the rest of his days enjoying his life. I respect him for it. I mean, he gave enough to his country as it was in his service as a general, and who could ever ask more than that for him to become the president as well. But with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Lewis, and thank you, Lewis. He said, I'm a disabled 9/11 Navy veteran, and I'm very disappointed in the military leadership and the political situation that's leading the country right now. Iran is playing us and making us look foolish.
I would agree. I wish that things would turn around and change, because it's not boding us well at all on any front at this point, how this war has been going. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep it running. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, Give Up Now put in a 10 and said 19 super chats left. And you were generally accurate. That's pretty close right there. It's actually 20. But thank you very much for that support, by the way. We also have a 10 from Mechtild, who said, in reference to the oil, car, and gas, if needed rather than 70s rationing, we could go into a version of like the COVID shutdown mode. And we've had experience. We know how to do it. Most folks preferred working remote, and it didn't want to go back to commuting. We might be going back to that anyway, because y'all know there's a new little situation happening, apparently, that just started on a cruise ship. And I got flagged today for mentioning that to people. But apparently it's human-to-human transmission, apparently, with this new variant of whatever that thing is. It sounds a little bit sketchy, but I'm not sure where it's going to go. But Enforcer, what say you?
What's it called?
It's called the hantavirus.
And how's this virus? Where does this virus come from?
So from what I know about it, it's apparently spread primarily via rodent feces and rodent, fluids and things like that. That's apparently how it's spread. And apparently on the cruise ship, it provided a confined environment, so it allowed the pathogen to spread quickly amongst people. But the catch is, though, it's not supposed to be able to spread human to human. It's supposed to be, a rodent virus. But somehow it spread human to human in the confined environment. Now they're worried that it might be able to have that ability. So now it's creating concern, and apparently several of the people that were on that ship just dispersed to the United States. They dispersed all over the world. So, people are not really sure where it's going to go.
Let's see here. What type of a virus is? So,
Respiratory.
Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. It begins 1 to 8 weeks after exposure to rodents, starting with flu-like fever, fatigue, and intense muscle aches. So this actually looks very similar to what COVID was back when it was in its strongest form before it started to evolve.
This one's got a worse mortality rate by a long shot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like pretty high.
Well, that's something. Looks like, folks, we're back in the age of plagues. Hey, we literally just escaped it. At the end of the last century, well, not the end of the last century, the end of the century before that, in the late 1800s, we finally started to escape that, and now it's all coming back around. So hey, it looks like plagues are returning back to the earth. Nature is going back to normal, unfortunately.
Although everybody's saying, though, they're saying it's not going to turn into anything. That's what the authorities are saying on it. So, hopefully it doesn't turn into anything. I'm hoping it doesn't. Hopefully it just goes away.
Well, that's what those people said about COVID. Remember back in the day in late 2019 when they were like, oh, well, it's like China's starting to tell people to stay indoors, and they just shut down the port of Shanghai. And I told you, Matthew, way back then, I was like, I think that's just a big deal. Like, that sounds like something major. You don't just shut down a major economic port for nothing. And people were like, oh, it's going to be nothing. It's no big deal. And then it turned into an international pandemic. I don't know, maybe you'll end up like Ebola. Ebola didn't go anywhere at all. Thank God. That one was rough. Hopefully this one will end up kind of like Ebola, but considering that all these people just got off of a cruise and they're not in an isolated place in Africa like Ebola, they're going everywhere into first world developed countries, probably traveling around a lot. This might start to spread.
Yeah, also, by the way, go to the Twitter page and go to the likes tab and click on the most recent post.
Got you. So, likes tab. This one?
Yeah. Look at the date.
Oh my, what? That's insane. This can't be real, can it?
Well, I mean, unless they modified the code of the site, which I doubt's possible from just a user standpoint, then apparently they were just a good guesser, possibly.
Damn. You gotta say, how many followers is this guy? Wow. Reads the future. So this guy, what?
That's that sick shit, that black magic.
You're turning into Polly. That's that sick shit. That black magic. Man, you're about to start throwing chairs at like the roof and stuff, man. Like,
Yeah, damn. I can't say the other thing
man,
they
you
said.
can't say it, man. Oh man, dude, you ever about like Polly walking out of the strip club and then you turn around, and you see like the Virgin Mary up there on like the stage. You remember that one?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh man, man. I mean, that's that's pretty dead on the nail. I didn't realize the timestamp down there, man. That's good. Sir. Let's go look at the other predictions that this guy's got. Like the Twilight Zone. Oh, dude, this is like concerning. They literally only made 4 posts back in 2022 and then stopped.
I don't know what happened to them.
They were too powerful for their own good. they were too powerful.
Man, I tell you, that sick shit.
That is just wild. I mean, like, this is a real account. Joined in June of 2022. Only posted 4 posts in 2022. In June, specifically, stopped. Never posted again. And their one actual prediction that isn't just a nice quote. This is accurate, actually. That's really crazy. But we'll have to see. Anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on and into the next one.
And our next one here goes to none other than Give Up Now, once again, he put in the 10. And they said 6D chess. Sun Tzu says confuse your allies to confuse your populace. Dow 50,000.
Oh my god, that was a genius. 50,000. Oh my god, that is incredible. You deserve a medal. You have landed the joke of the night. That was the best thing I have heard in a week, maybe even longer than that. That was great. I love that one. That is one of the best jokes I've heard recently. Oh, 50,000. Oh my god. Man, the genius of that is incredible. You need to go on tour for a comedy routine. That is great. But a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep on running. And also, just to get us a quote out of the book of The Art of War by Sun Tzu, this is, let's see, Chapter 7, Maneuvering, Rule 18, in raiding and plundering, be like fire, is immovability like a mountain. Damn, that's deep.
The hell's that mean?
He's a genius, Matthew. Don't question. Oh man, what about
One fly, be like bird, flutter.
Rule 21, ponder and deliberate before you make a move. Who the hell's making a move
That's
without
actually
thinking?
smart. This dude Sun Tzu is like freaking what is Newton? Like, an object in motion stays in motion, one at rest stays at rest. This dude's like, he must have been knowing Newton.
When you look, this one aged well. When you plunder a countryside, let the spoil be divided amongst your men. When you capture new territory, cut it up into allotments for the benefit of the soldiery. Wow, that one definitely
bro,
is
that
a
sounds like
violation
straight
of
up
the Geneva
robbery.
Convention. Bro, that's a war crime. Like, that's literally a war
Really?
crime.
Man, Sun Tzu, although this was way before all that came around, but I mean, still though, I mean, that's literally straight up robbery. He's talking about split. This dude sounds like a pirate.
Man, meanwhile, down here, man, the Book of Army Management says, so now he's quoting a whole other book. On the field of battle, the spoken word does not carry far enough. Man, everyone can attest to that. Hence the institution of gongs and drums. Nor can ordinary objects be seen clearly enough. Hence the institution of banners and flags. Man, out there on the battlefield of Sun Tzu, he had somebody going, "Give the order to spread formation," and they went, "Dung dung, hachimichi machi." Hashima ochi mambo right, like, it's like, bro, get it, man. Let's see. Let's move on.
Also, by the way, we got to move on.
This is so fun though, looking at these stupid rules. Like, they're so dumb. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Rye Guy SR, who puts in the chat. He said, tail light warranty, LLTLSA, and take one from the chat.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. And we will take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one is going to go to Essay, who said, do you guys think there will be consequences for Russia because they hit Estonia?
We'll have to see. I would hope so, but knowing how NATO works, they'll probably just say, that's really something. And we'll have to write up a strongly worded letter to let the Russians know we didn't like it. So hopefully it's not that. Hopefully we actually do see a strong response of some sort. But a big thanks to you for the support and of this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Right Geek Project yet again. And they said Russia is not doing well against Ukraine, so why attack NATO to make things worse? And why not focus on Ukraine? And why is Israel not helping out with Hormuz situation? And are they not impacted by the blockage?
Russia is not doing well against Ukraine, but the reason why they're trying to instigate a war against Europe is because it's a wild card plan where it's basically all or nothing. They're going to basically collapse either way at this point, so they're thinking they might as well threaten to take everyone else out with them to get some significant concessions. That's kind of what we're thinking their plan is at the moment, is that's the only way that what they're doing would line up to make any kind of sense, even if that sense is very illogical. As far as Israel not really helping out with Iran, what, do you got a problem with them or something? To answer the question legitimately, I couldn't even really give you a good answer on that one because you'd think they'd be helping. They do have a navy, but as we all know, folks, the Israelis are the greatest. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Miss Paula Thomas, and they said, with your generals not making the decisions, is it any wonder that Europeans have our doubts about joining in? And thanks guys for the channel.
Thank you so much for the kind words. You've been around forever, by the way. Big thanks to you for still being here and supporting the channel. And I would say definitely, I see why they have doubts about us joining in. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 7 from Davin, and Davin said pizza index is climbing with chances of Canadian bacon and double pineapple tonight.
That sounds very concerning. That is a bad omen. That is a bad omen. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Tisoka, who said gas prices are hovering around $4 to $6, but hey, at least we're getting a UFC event next month at the White House.
Nothing says.
Man, I feel like we're having I feel like the American citizens are having a fighting event conducted on them every day. I feel like we're getting the uppercut to the jaw pretty much every day. Like these prices are whooping my ass. Like every time I go to the gas pump, I feel like the gas pump's beating my ass. Then I go to the store, I pick up a box of cookies, they're beating my ass. I'm just getting like beat up everywhere. I'm just like a chump. I feel like we're all chumps. But Enforcer, what you think?
Well, I gotta tell you, nothing speaks patriotism to the founding fathers and the original image of America like having a whole smackdown ass-beating event go on at the White House. Nothing truly says it like that. Oh, buddy. You know, nothing actually refined or, you know, portraying this nation in a higher image than what I would equate to basically like lower forms of entertainment. Nah, we got to have an ass beating on that southern lawn of the White House. Like, I'm not saying that like UFC is for like you know what the bottom rung of society, but I'm also saying, folks, that at the same time, celebrating on the 4th of July, the 250th anniversary of the country with an ass beating smackdown and like the Toys R Us like fighting ring, I don't really like that. Like, I just don't like the image of that. I feel like that's really kind of selling the country short for its 250th anniversary. I would feel like we could do a lot of other things that would really portray the country in a much better light than that. You know, it's like, what next? Are we gonna have Hulk Hogan come out there and like hit someone with a steel chair?
People love to gather around. They love to gather around and say, beat them senseless, beat them senseless. It's like, you know, I mean, you know, it's to each his own and stuff like that. I'll just say that. But it seems a little bit strange to hold on the White House lawn, though. That seems a little bit strange.
Like, you know, I would feel, folks, that for the 4th of July this year, instead of having a beat down on the south lawn of the White House, why wouldn't we have like an amazing public event on the National Mall, you know, a humongous concert by the Armed Forces Symphony Orchestras, and then like some sort of an interesting show that families could enjoy of, you know, the evolution of our nation or something like that. You know, some sort of a neat, proud event that's really eloquent and powerful for all the people of the country instead of a cheap like sporting event. Like, I don't like.
Well, You can probably answer that question. I know you're smart enough to answer that question.
Because I'm me. I am what I am.
No, because, he's doing it for a reason. I mean, he's doing it for a reason. There's a reason behind it. He's trying to appeal to a certain group of people. That's why he's doing it. So, I mean, the people that like the bread and circuses and stuff like that, the people that like to see a smackdown in a fighting rink. I'm not saying that everybody that watches UFC, by the way, is brainless, because occasionally I'll watch them from time to time, and I'm not the most intelligent person in the world, but I like to think I'm average intelligence. It's just there's a reason behind it. It's appealing to a certain group of people that he needs support.
Like, here's what I was thinking, folks, in my head for like a cool idea. Let me show y'all really quickly. We're kind of a little pressed for time, but I feel like I explained this. Lincoln Memorial is a backdrop. You can use the stage here, set up some backdrop stuff here on the side, so that way there could be some staging for like the performance. Empty out the reflecting pool because it's already emptied out and it's literally just a couple of inches deep. Set up rows of bleachers here and then have everybody show up. It's a public event, and have the story of the nation told on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, all lit up really nice and everything. And then at the end of the story, when they make it to the modern day, make it like a 45-minute to an hour-long show, have a nice big fireworks show on the Potomac River behind the Lincoln Memorial. I feel like that is way more classy and a much better way to celebrate this country's 250th anniversary than a UFC fight. What do y'all think? I think that would have been a much better way to do it if we were just trying to come up with an event off the cuff. I could come up with a million of them, but that would be an idea that I think would portray the country in a much better way and be something for everybody, for the family to enjoy, instead of a UFC fight, which I don't really think is family friendly. I mean, haven't you all seen the UFC? People are getting like their teeth knocked out and stuff there. That doesn't really seem that family friendly to me, at least, but whatever. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from the Secret Vault, and thank you everyone for the support as well. They said, just a note, ADSB is for aircraft traffic and AIS is for marine traffic, LSA.
And I thank you for the support. It's the Secret Vault, and I think I have said ADSB for ships, and I'm very wrong on that. But a big thanks to your support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Waterways. He said, first time donation, and very thankful to Enforcer and Enforcer Matt for your dedication to the good people of the world. And thank you for that, by the way. We do appreciate that. He said, can you briefly share the origin of the LSA?
The LSA was started many years ago, I believe on the 28th day of the channel, if I'm not mistaken, when I said that a Panzer S1 that was using leaf spring suspension was using an obsolete suspension system. I was very wrong. I got clowned on for days because of that by the audience, and it became so funny that it turned into a thing, and then the community got called the Leaf Spring Army as a result, and then we built up a core set of ideals that people are supposed to have as members of the LSA. Ideas of supporting American Western interests, looking out for the common good of the citizenry, regardless of political allegiance, having loyalty to the nation and looking out for its best interests, and standing up to support and protect those interests of the people and the nation at large because of the convictions to that, helping out our allies and supporting them, building up a sphere of influence in the world that people would want to join because it's such a good one and we're such friendly people in this nation who reach out to others and bring them up with us because the rising tide brings up all ships, as they say. Things like that. That's the LSA, and I got to thank you so much for the kind words and the support to this channel and helping us to keep it running. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Tisoka, who said, we need to stop with this half-baked BS. It shouldn't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. The U.S. needs to pick one thing and stick with it.
I would agree, Tisoka. I would definitely agree. And a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from C146, who said, I'll have you know, I've heard we have more munitions than when we started. Thank you very much.
Exactly, because weapons production has always worked at a factory assembly line as we're burning through munitions faster than we can replace them, but somehow we now have twice than we had at the start. And that definitely adds up. But big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Overlord, who said it's almost hilarious how the U.S. kind of pushed the end of EVs just to turn around and create an oil crisis a year later. So much winning.
I know. Winning to the max. And a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Irish Ed here, and thank you very much, Irish Ed, for that support. He said, "Good day, good old Irish Ed here, and Russia is scared of V-Day, LSA, and love you all."
Hey, and a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Irish Ed. And I gotta say that it's a great thing, a great pleasure to have you here. And Russia does appear to be scared of that V-Day, I tell you. Unfortunately for them, they'll have to be scared until it's over. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $5 support from Sylph, and thank you, Sylph, for that 5. They said LSA all day.
And long live the LSA. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Someone said they sound drunk. Are you crazy? But anyways, our next one here goes to Good Boda, who puts in a 5 and said 4 to 7% of crude supply was taken out of the market during the 70s. This time it's probably north of 10%, but there is more oil at sea and expect rations.
And I would have to say a big thanks to you for the support. And I would have to say, actually, this is more towards 20%, unfortunately. About around there. That's the ballpark figure. So, unfortunately, we'll be dealing with some tough times. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from DWRB, and thank you very much for that support as well. He said, chess, checkers, Uno, blackjack, poker. I can't tell what game we're playing anymore, but Iran is unfortunately holding something right now, and hopefully someone in leadership will step up and grow a pair. I think they're playing 21 card pickup. What's another one? They're playing Red Rover, come right over. They're playing chicken. They're playing stupid games. Patty whack, patty cake. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, folks, I don't know what they're playing, but I think they're playing a hog full of bullshit. To be honest with y'all, they're playing a hog full of bullshit, and they're playing some of y'all for suckers. But a big thanks to you so much for the support, and hopefully they start playing a real game sometime soon. Because for them to be talking about Zelensky not having the cards, we sure as hell look like we got none right now. But a big thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
Yeah, red light, green light. That's right. But there's a lot of red lights popping up right now. There's no green lights. I'm not seeing the green light here. But anyways, our next one goes to Jake, who puts in a 5. And Jake said, double check your gasoline info. According to the U.S. Something here, March 2026 report, gasoline production 9.7 million barrels per day. U.S. consumes 8.9 billion barrels per day. Are you sure they measure gasoline in barrels, by the way?
They do, but Jake is misunderstanding. Yeah, Jake is misunderstanding something here. You see, a barrel of oil does not convert perfectly into a barrel of gasoline. That's not how it works. Just to get this for you, from the EIA, which answers this very question, petroleum refineries in the United States produce about 19 to 20 gallons of motor gasoline and 11 to 12 gallons of ultra low sulfur distillate fuel oil, most of which is sold as diesel fuel, from 142 gallon barrel of crude oil. So as far as gasoline goes, you only produce half of a barrel of oil as gasoline. That is the best that can be done. So that's why those figures are a lot smaller than the one I'm reporting, because if you multiply either of those by 2, you end up basically at the numbers that I was quoting earlier as the barrels of oil that we use in this country per day, because it takes 2 barrels of oil to produce 1 barrel of gas, basically, or 2 barrels of oil to produce 1 barrel of diesel. But that's how that works. So I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that and clarify that well, because I think you're getting oil and gas mixed up a little bit there, but I hope that does clarify that. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, very quickly, just an update about the Latvia situation real quick. It's not looking good with the Latvia situation. It sounds like the defense minister inside of Latvia is apparently, according to, it appears to be a Latvian source, says the situation is complicated. So that's not a good sign. Also, it appears to be that they're saying that this is not coming from him, by the way. This is coming from some other source. That apparently many more than just 2 Russian drones entered Latvian airspace, and only 2 of them crashed, and the other ones went somewhere else inside of Latvia. They're not sure where yet. So it appears to be likely intentional. But moving on to our next one here, this one's going to go to Jeremy Vahil, who puts in a 5. He said, what if the Tunguska event happened tomorrow over Moscow?
I don't think the Ukrainians can do that one. Like, I think that one is beyond their abilities. But a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Chad Shepard. He said, both of you, what would be your top 3 targets in Iran when this all first kicked off, or top 3 targets to secure?
I would place all 3 of them around the Hormuz. That's literally all I could say about that. But Matthew, what would you say?
Honestly, starting the war when it kicked off, top 3 targets to hit. I'll be honest, it's kind of a hard call right there. I mean, the primary war objectives was to go take out the nuclear sites. So I'd probably say hit the nuclear sites. That would be probably what I would be saying to do. But also, securing the Strait of Hormuz, that was priority number 1 because that was the biggest leverage that Iran was going to have when the war started. So probably, hitting all along the Iranian coastline to take out their missile launchers that are immediately on the coast. And then you have to sustain those operations because they're going to bring more to that area, which we're currently seeing right now. So yeah, I would say the coastline for the Strait of Hormuz, the nuclear sites, and third, of course, like they did, you got to take out, the whole situation with the government there. So yeah, that'd be it.
I would say, just to clarify a little bit more why I put all 3 of them around the Strait of Hormuz, getting rid of their nuclear sites and also getting rid of their regime could be achieved in negotiations, but that requires us to actually win the war against them instead of trying to deal with those issues directly with overt military action. That's why I'm saying that I put all 3 of them around the Hormuz, because at that point, at the very opening of the war, if we focus everything on the Hormuz and let Israel deal with the missile launchers and whatnot, because that's really more so their problem than ours in that regard, we are able to make sure that the Iranians never blockade the Hormuz, which is the only hand they hold, and it's a very big one to hold. And once we make sure that they don't lay any mines and blockade the strait, then we can go in to do whatever we want afterwards, or we can end up bringing Iran to its knees over a war that lasts at that point years with really no effect to us or the Western sphere. And then we're able in negotiations to see the collapse of the regime and also inherently the collapse of the nuclear program as a result. Or we're able to arm all of the Iranian civilians over that war of attrition to be able to rise up and overthrow their government to where we don't even have to negotiate with them because that government has ceased to exist along with the nation that they ran, and a new one would be formed out of the ashes of the old. But I hope that does address the best I can, in my opinion, what I would have done at the beginning of the war, because I feel like that would have been a lot more of a sound option than what we did. But a big thanks to you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
We also have here a support from Darren Quinn. He said, Australia, gasoline's over $2.60 a liter, diesel's over $3.60.
Good Lord. $2.60 a liter? Doesn't it take 4 liters almost to make up a gallon or 2 or so or something?
I think so, something like that.
I don't know the measurements from liters to gallons, sadly, folks. I'm all over the place with that one. 2 or 4, I don't know. But that is expensive. Like, that is insanely expensive. I'm so sorry about that, Darren. Hopefully we can fix the situation at some point to stabilize this at least and not see it continue to climb. But a big thanks to you for support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 2 from Zalagar, who said that's a fuel tank that got jettisoned, not Reaper parts.
I would have to agree. It does appear that it was a fuel tank. And a big thanks to you for support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 2 from C146 who said last chat exactly 225 characters first try.
Hey, nice. And a big thanks to you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Sleef who put in at 2 and said LSA. And thank you very much for the support. Once again, by the way. We also have a 2 from Give Up Now. And a big shout out to Give Up Now for the, I believe, the 3rd or 4th support. We also have a 2 from Jeremy Vahil. He said, how is Putin's mental health? Is it 3.5 Rontgen?
It's not 3.5 Rontgen. It's 10,000 Rontgen. It's like 100,000 Rontgen. But a big thanks to your support. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 2 from Dominarian, and thank you very much for the support. They said, can we watch you 2 play the Alex Jones game? LOL. Now, I prefer not to play that game. I don't like that game where you get put into court and, huge judgments get put against you. I don't like that game. I prefer not to play it. I don't like those. But Enforcer, what say you?
I thank you for the support. I'm not really a big fan of the whole Alex Jones game. That one didn't turn out well. I think he lost it. He lost that game. I don't really want to repeat that, me personally. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 2 from Hormuz Vessel, who said, where do we go from here?
we go forward.
Up. You can only go up. Here's the thing. When you hit bedrock, the only place you can go is up.
Listen, buddy, can you stop asking stupid questions? The Dow is up 50,000 points. Oh, man.
The Dow is at 50,000 points.
Then she got fired.
Amazing grace.
That's what I said. That's what I said.
You're fired. You're 50,000 points in the hole. Get out.
All right, you made yourself look too much like a clown. We're fine with looking like the Ringling Brothers Circus, but you look like Pagliacci, the dancing clown. You gotta go. Like, it's like, okay, out the window. But okay, who's next? I have to say, everybody, that I'm handing out brandy. Okay, he might be next. Like, he might be the next one. We don't know for sure, but we're getting the chopping block ready to go. But anyways, with that, a big thanks to your support at War Moves Vessel. And to be honest with you, like, answering your question honestly and not joking around about it, I don't even know where. Well, I would hope that we would start military actions to reopen the strait. That would be clearly the best action we could take right now. Current administration is adamant on doing everything but that. So I don't know what they plan on doing, but I'd tell you what I'd do. I'd forcefully reopen the strait at this point. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that does address that the best that we possibly can. And with that in mind, folks, it is time for us to move on into the question segment. Unfortunately, folks, due to time constraints at this moment tonight, we will be able to gather the Morse code decoders of the stream and 3 live chat questions, and then we'll be rounding out this thing for the night. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we have the Morse code decoders. We have Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic Fluffiness, Coach Comateric, Siren, Brian. They said the Morse code says there was once a time where there was an ultimatum. Now there is. LLT, LSA.
And and that's the sound of money. There once was an ultimatum, now there wasn't, now there was, and alas, there wasn't. But a big congratulations to y'all for getting that Morse code message correct. Y'all get that correct each and every day, amazingly so. We congratulate Luis Marcinal Corps for getting that correct time and time again. Truly incredible. And so with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Taylor, who said, are we going to talk about the Saudis not allowing the U.S. to use their airspace to attack Iran? What does this mean?
Well, it doesn't mean anything good, Taylor. Like, what do you want me to say? Like,
Well, it's not exactly a bragging point, although we're going to turn it into one. The reason why they kicked us out is because we were too good. They said, you got to leave. You can't stay. You're winning too much. They said, we can't take it anymore, sir. Too much winning. Get out of our country. You bastards, take your planes too.
they got so happy with winning, they got tired of winning, and they told us to leave. It's a crazy thing. Who the hell would want me to leave? Fake news. Well, you know what we're going to do next? We're going to insult the Saudi government by bringing the Crown Prince over here and bringing up an embarrassing historical moment about their country. Probably something about how they're a British puppet that was installed in the 1930s to control the oil fields. Maybe we'll bring that up. I'm sure that'll smooth over diplomatic relations. I really did well on that one with Japan and Germany. I brought up Pearl Harbor with Japan and World War II with Germany. That's the two things you don't talk about with those countries, and I brought them up. Definitely helping out with relations there. Next thing you know, I'm going to bring up to Britain how their government back in the 1950s went real socialist and kind of ran the country in the ground, but I'm sure that won't really prod them a lot and piss them off, but, you know, I'm great at diplomacy. What can I say? I bring up the most embarrassing moment of every country, one that they will take personally, and then I say it to them like it's a joke on the global stage. It works well, pisses them all off, and then I pretend like it was good, because trolling's great, especially when we're all going broke over it. But anyways, with that, a big thanks to you for the great question there, Taylor. But beyond that, what I'd have to tell you honestly is that we'll either have to base our operations out of different countries, or we'll have to negotiate for them to eventually somehow reopen their airspace. Truth be told, we can't really relocate. We were basically maxing out capacity at most of the bases that we're at right now in the Middle East, so we kind of have to just negotiate with them and make them happy somehow to where they allow us to keep using their airspace and their facilities. Otherwise, we're kind of up the creek without a paddle, sadly, at this point. But a big thanks to you for support and a great question there. And also, someone said, I hope you're doing the hand gestures. You have to do them. Like, I'm doing all of them. I'm doing the pointy fingers, the OK signs. I'm doing all of it. Like, sadly, you can't see it, though. But anyways, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Alex Williams. And he said, do you two think it'll get to the point of gas rationing in the United States? And if so, do you have an estimated timeline?
I would say yes at this point. It definitely will have to. And it's probably, if it happens at all, it's probably going to be late May or June, I would assume at this point. If nothing changes, and I have to make that clear, if we are seeing the situation as it is today and nothing has changed since then, we're probably going to see fuel rationing go into effect by late May or sometime in June, I would assume. Because if we run out of resources in July at current consumption rates, a ration would be completely pointless at that point. It has to happen beforehand to be able to conserve whatever is left. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
We also have a question from Justin. He said, do you think boots on the ground from day one might have helped? Just a thought.
I think as far as the Ormuz, like the islands of Qeshm, Larak, and Ormuz Island itself, it probably would have helped. But putting boots on the ground on mainland Iran probably wouldn't have done us all too good. It actually probably would have been pretty bad. So I would say that in a limited instance, yes, but across the board, probably not. But I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a huge shout out to Dominiran, who threw into 2. Big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, it is time for us to round out this stream for the night. I got to thank you all so much once again for watching this channel and enjoying it. Over the course of an entire whopping 3 hours and 55 minutes, 19.5 thousand people watched this channel, and 140,000 people in total were here. A big thanks to you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for each and every single one of y'all. And I hope that y'all have enjoyed. I know that we didn't really have a lot of positive stuff to report out of the Middle East today. Hopefully that eventually changes. I have a feeling it won't change tomorrow, but maybe in the next couple of days, that'll turn their act around. But in the meantime, we thank you all so much once again for watching. And if there is a short video to be made tomorrow, Enforcer Matt will be the one making it. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Adam Slava. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow on the midday short war video if there is enough news to cover, which there may be. We'll have to see, though. But we'll definitely be live at 10 p.m. Eastern to cover the rest of the news throughout the day. And also, we will see tomorrow if Iran misbehaves again and gets the hose again. We'll have to see what happens with that whole situation and see what happens with Iran and see if the United States decides to go for it or not. But we'll find out, though, very soon. But with that, thank you all once again for joining us once again tonight. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hero Slava, get some rest, and good night.